The Persian Achaemenid Empire, 550 BC to 330 BC, stands as one of the most extensive and efficiently governed empires in recorded history. It unified peoples across 3 continents, connecting the Mediterranean world to the Indus Valley through advanced administration, organized taxation, and a respect for cultural diversity uncommon in its time. The Achaemenids built a system of governance that influenced every empire that followed, from the Macedonian and Seleucid successors to the Romans and later Islamic caliphates. To understand how such an empire emerged, it is necessary to begin before its foundation, before Cyrus the Great rose from the Iranian highlands to challenge the Median rulers. The story of the Achaemenid world does not begin with conquest, but with centuries of movement, settlement, and political evolution among the Iranian peoples. Long before 550 BC, tribes in the Zagros and the Iranian plateau laid the groundwork for what would become the First Persian Empire. Before 550 BC, the lands that would become the Persian Empire were a mosaic of peoples, cultures, and small kingdoms scattered across the Iranian plateau and beyond. This vast region stretched from the Zagros Mountains in the west to the deserts of Central Asia in the east. Its geography, divided by highlands, deserts, and valleys, shaped its fragmented political landscape. Each area developed independently, bound only loosely by trade, shared linguistic roots, and cultural exchange. The earliest known civilization in this region was Elam, located in what is now southwestern Iran. Elamite centers like Susa and Anshan flourished as early as the 3rd millennium BC. By the 2nd millennium BC, Elam had become a regional power interacting with Mesopotamian states such as Babylon and Assyria. The Elamites spoke a distinct language unrelated to the Indo-European or Semitic families and had their own writing system derived from cuneiform. Their state survived repeated wars and invasions, at times dominating Lower Mesopotamia, at other times falling under Babylonian control. Even as Elam declined in the early 1st millennium BC, its administrative practices and urban traditions influenced later Iranian rulers. To the north and east of Elam lived Iranian-speaking tribes. Linguistic and archaeological evidence indicate that Indo-Iranian peoples began migrating into the Iranian plateau around 1500 to 1000 BC, moving from the steppes of Central Asia. These groups brought new languages and social structures based on tribal kinship. Over time, they formed distinct branches: the Medes, the Persians, the Parthians, and smaller tribes that occupied different parts of the plateau. Among these, the Medes settled in the northwest, centered around Ecbatana, modern Hamadan, while the Persians established themselves farther south in the region of Fars, ancient Pars. By the 9th century BC, Assyrian records referred to the Madai, Medes, and Parswash, Persians, as small but notable groups inhabiting the Zagros region. These references mark the first known appearance of the Persians in written history. They were not yet unified. Rather, they were a confederation of clans ruled by local chiefs. The Persians acknowledged the overlordship of stronger regional powers, particularly the Elamites and later the Medes. Despite this subordination, their position near trade routes linking Mesopotamia, Central Asia, and India gave them early exposure to foreign technologies and cultural influences. The Assyrian Empire, during its height under rulers like Tiglath-Pileser III, 745 to 727 BC, and Sargon II, 722 to 705 BC, exerted control over western Iran. The Medes and Persians alternated between being Assyrian vassals and rebellious frontiersmen. Repeated Assyrian campaigns devastated the Iranian highlands, but they also introduced administrative and military ideas that future Iranian empires would adopt. Iron tools, cavalry tactics, and the use of fortified capitals spread through contact and conflict with Assyria. By the late 8th and 7th centuries BC, the Medes began consolidating their power. Under kings such as Deioces, Phraortes, and eventually Cyaxares, the Median tribes united into a single political entity. Around 612 BC, Cyaxares allied with the Babylonians to destroy the Assyrian capital Nineveh, ending the Assyrian Empire. The Median victory reshaped Near Eastern geopolitics. The Medes extended their dominance over much of Iran, eastern Anatolia, and parts of Central Asia. Their capital, Ecbatana, became a major center of administration and wealth. Greek historian Herodotus later described Ecbatana as a city with 7 concentric walls, each painted in a different color, a symbol of Median prestige. Under the Medes, the Persians in the south became subjects but retained internal autonomy. Their ruling family, the Achaemenids, governed the district of Anshan, an old Elamite city now under Persian control. The Achaemenid line traced its ancestry to a semi-legendary founder named Achaemenes, from whom the dynasty takes its name. His descendants, including Teispes, Cyrus I, and Cambyses I, ruled successively as local kings under Median suzerainty. While politically subordinate, they gradually built military strength and administrative experience, positioning themselves to take advantage of any Median weakness. Cultural and linguistic ties united the Medes and Persians, both belonging to the Iranian branch of the Indo-European language family. Their social organization was similar: tribal nobility supported by warrior elites and bound by loyalty to the king. Religion centered on the worship of natural forces, sky, fire, and earth, and concepts of cosmic order later associated with Zoroastrianism. Although the exact origins of Zoroastrian belief remain debated, by this period the prophet Zarathustra, Zoroaster, had likely introduced teachings emphasizing Ahura Mazda as the supreme deity and the moral distinction between truth, Asha, and falsehood, Duryuj. These ideas profoundly influenced later Persian governance and law. The economic base of these early Iranian societies was mixed. Agriculture flourished in fertile valleys, supported by irrigation from rivers and underground channels, qanats, while nomadic pastoralism dominated the highlands. Trade connected the Iranian plateau to neighboring civilizations. Tin, lapis lazuli, and horses moved westward. Textiles, metals, and manufactured goods flowed eastward. This exchange exposed the Persians to Mesopotamian writing, Babylonian astronomy, and Anatolian metallurgy long before they founded an empire. By the mid-6th century BC, the Median Empire began to weaken. Internal rivalries and the growing independence of subject peoples strained its unity. Astyages, the last Median king, ruled from Ecbatana but faced dissent among nobles and military leaders. Meanwhile, in the south, Cyrus II, son of Cambyses I and grandson of Cyrus I, inherited the throne of Anshan around 559 BC. According to later tradition, Astyages attempted to suppress Cyrus early in his reign, fearing his potential. However, Cyrus had already consolidated Persian tribes under his leadership, blending loyalty with pragmatic governance. By 550 BC, the conditions were set for a decisive confrontation between Median authority and Persian ambition. Astyages mobilized his army to crush the Persian revolt, but Median commanders defected to Cyrus during the campaign. The defection of General Harpagus, a key figure within the Median elite, proved crucial. Astyages was defeated and captured, and Ecbatana fell to Cyrus without widespread destruction. This event marked the unification of the Persians and Medes under a single ruler, the beginning of the Achaemenid Empire. The shift from Median to Persian dominance was more than a simple coup. It represented the first stage in the creation of a new model of empire. Cyrus retained many Median officials and administrative systems, but integrated them into a more inclusive structure. The Persians did not destroy Median identity. Instead, they built upon it, combining Iranian traditions with the bureaucratic sophistication inherited from Mesopotamia and Elam. By the end of the pre-imperial period around 550 BC, the foundations of Persian power were in place. A unified Iranian people under a capable dynasty, a mixture of agricultural and nomadic resources, and exposure to the political systems of older empires. Cyrus's rise transformed Persia from a subject land into the nucleus of a state that would soon dominate 3 continents. The world before the Persian Empire was a web of rival powers: Lydia in Anatolia, Babylon in Mesopotamia, Egypt along the Nile, and the Greek city-states emerging in the Aegean. Into this world, Persia would enter not as another small kingdom, but as a new kind of empire, one that fused regional diversity into an administrative whole. The stage was set for the expansion that would define the next 2 centuries of ancient history. In 550 BC, Cyrus II of Persia began a rebellion that reshaped the ancient world. The Persians, once subjects of the Medes, were now led by a king who aimed to unite all Iranian tribes under one rule. Cyrus was the son of Cambyses I, a Persian king of Anshan, and Mandane, daughter of Astyages, the Median ruler. This lineage gave Cyrus both Persian and Median royal connections, though politically he remained a vassal within the Median hierarchy. The Median Empire at this time was the dominant Iranian power, its capital at Ecbatana serving as the political and economic center of Western Iran. Astyages had ruled since the early 580s BC, maintaining control over an expansive territory that included parts of Anatolia, northern Mesopotamia, and the Iranian plateau. However, the Median system was fragile. Nobles and military leaders commanded significant autonomy, and Astyages' central authority weakened with time. His dependence on loyal commanders such as Harpagus would later contribute to his downfall. Cyrus's revolt began around 553 BC, likely triggered by growing Persian discontent with Median rule. Sources differ on how it started, but the Babylonian Nabonidus Chronicle, a near-contemporary record, confirms that Cyrus fought against Astyages and overthrew him in 550 BC. According to later Greek accounts, Astyages mobilized his army against Cyrus, but during the campaign, parts of the Median force defected. Harpagus, a prominent Median general, shifted allegiance to Cyrus, ensuring a swift victory. Astyages was captured, and Ecbatana fell without major destruction. After the fall of Media, Cyrus adopted the title King of Anshan and King of Persia, and later King of the Medes and Persians. Rather than dismantle the Median structure, he incorporated it. Median satraps and administrators retained their posts, creating continuity in governance. This decision marked a critical administrative shift. The Persians inherited and expanded upon the existing Median framework rather than replacing it. Ecbatana became a royal residence within the new empire. Cyrus respected Median elites and allowed them to integrate into the emerging Persian hierarchy. This policy prevented prolonged rebellion and helped stabilize newly unified Iran. By consolidating the Medes and Persians, Cyrus laid the foundation for the first unified Iranian state, an empire that soon extended beyond the plateau. Once internal unity was secured, Cyrus turned outward. Between 549 and 547 BC, he reorganized his forces, combining Persian infantry with Median cavalry and auxiliary troops from the Iranian highlands. His army relied on mobility and disciplined coordination. The Persians used composite bows, short spears, and light armor suited to open terrain. Logistics and supply lines were organized through established Median and Elamite routes, giving his forces operational range over vast areas. Cyrus's next target was the powerful kingdom of Lydia in western Anatolia. The Lydians, under King Croesus, controlled rich mineral resources, especially gold from the Pactolus River, and dominated important trade routes connecting the Aegean to central Anatolia. Croesus had alliances with Babylon and Egypt, and he viewed the growing power of Persia as a threat to his interests. Around 547 BC, he advanced eastward across the Halys River, modern Kızılırmak, to challenge Cyrus. The initial confrontation took place at Tyria, near Cappadocia. The battle was indecisive, and Croesus withdrew to Sardis, expecting to regroup and wait for his allies' reinforcements in the spring. Cyrus, understanding the strategic risk of delay, pursued immediately across Anatolia during the winter, an uncommon move at the time. His army reached Sardis unexpectedly and engaged Croesus's forces in open battle. The decisive encounter occurred in 546 BC near Sardis. According to Herodotus, Cyrus adapted his tactics to neutralize the Lydian cavalry, known for its strength. He placed camels in the front ranks, whose scent and presence caused the Lydian horses to panic. The Persian infantry and archers advanced under this disruption, breaking the Lydian line. Croesus retreated to the citadel of Sardis, which fell after a short siege. The capture of Sardis marked the end of Lydia's independence and the beginning of Persian control over western Anatolia. After Croesus's defeat, Cyrus spared him, incorporating the Lydian elite into his administration. This policy of tolerance and assimilation became characteristic of Achaemenid rule. The annexation of Lydia also brought the Greek cities of Ionia, Aeolis, and Curia under Persian dominion. These coastal states, including Ephesus, Miletus, and Smyrna, had previously been under Lydian influence. Rather than destroying them, Cyrus allowed local governance to continue under Persian oversight, demanding only tribute and loyalty. The conquest of Lydia extended Persian power to the Aegean coast and secured access to maritime trade routes. Control of Anatolia also brought vast economic resources, metals, textiles, and agricultural wealth. The region's road systems were integrated into the Persian network, laying the groundwork for what would become the Royal Road, linking Sardis to Susa and beyond. Cyrus's westward expansion did not provoke the same kind of administrative breakdown that followed other conquests of the time. The transition from Median and Lydian systems to Persian rule was marked by continuity rather than rupture. Local rulers, craftsmen, and scribes were absorbed into imperial service. The Persians preferred pragmatic governance over cultural imposition, which allowed their authority to spread rapidly with minimal resistance. The annexation of Lydia also shifted the balance of power in the Near East. Babylon, Egypt, and the Greek world now faced a single, unified Persian state stretching from the Iranian plateau to the Aegean Sea. Babylonian sources from this period begin to refer to Cyrus as King of Parsu and King of the Universe, a title acknowledging both his growing influence and his challenge to existing Mesopotamian powers. Archaeological and epigraphic evidence supports this rapid consolidation. Administrative tablets found in Babylon and Susa show Persian control over trade and taxation networks shortly after these conquests. The integration of the Anatolian economy into Persian systems was efficient enough that local coinage and weights were maintained for decades, with Persian oversight rather than replacement. By 546 BC, Cyrus's empire stretched from the Zagros Mountains across the Tigris Basin to the Aegean coast. He had unified the Iranian plateau and secured Western Asia Minor. His governance blended Median precedent, Elamite administration, and Persian leadership. Cyrus did not yet establish the elaborate bureaucratic mechanisms that Darius I would later perfect, but the essential structure, centralized control supported by local administration, was already in place. The campaigns between 550 and 546 BC demonstrated the military flexibility and political adaptability that would define Persian expansion for the next 2 centuries. Each victory was followed not by destruction, but by incorporation. The Persians advanced not merely through conquest, but through systematic integration of existing systems into a larger imperial framework. At the close of this period, Cyrus had turned Persia from a regional power into the dominant force of the Near East. The foundation was secure: a unified homeland, a disciplined army, and an administrative model capable of absorbing diverse populations and economies. From this base, Cyrus would move east toward Mesopotamia and the next stage of Persian expansion. By 550 BC, the balance of power in the Near East began to shift. Cyrus II, known to history as Cyrus the Great, emerged from the Persian heartland of Anshan in southwestern Iran. He was the son of Cambyses I, king of Anshan, and grandson of Cyrus I, a vassal ruler under Median control. The Persians at this time were still considered subordinate to the Medes, who had dominated western Iran since the late 7th century BC. Cyrus began his reign around 559 BC, but his authority was initially limited to the region of Anshan. His first significant political act was to consolidate Persian tribes under his rule, uniting them against the Median overlords. In 553 BC, he led a revolt against King Astyages of Media. Contemporary Babylonian chronicles, such as the Nabonidus Chronicle, record that several Median generals defected to Cyrus, weakening Astyages' position. By 550 BC, Cyrus had captured Ecbatana, the Median capital. Astyages was dethroned, and the Median Empire was absorbed into what became the Achaemenid state. Cyrus adopted a pragmatic approach toward conquered peoples. Rather than destroy Median institutions, he incorporated their administrative system into his new empire. Ecbatana remained a royal city, and the Medes became key officials and military leaders under Persian command. This approach of cooperation rather than suppression became a hallmark of Achaemenid governance. Following his victory over the Medes, Cyrus turned his attention westward to Lydia, one of the richest kingdoms of the ancient world. Lydia's ruler, King Croesus, had built immense wealth from control of gold resources along the Pactolus River. Croesus, interpreting the fall of Media as a threat, sought alliances with Babylon, Egypt, and Sparta. In 547 BC, he advanced east across the Halys River into Cappadocia. Cyrus responded quickly, forcing Croesus to retreat to Sardis, the Lydian capital. The decisive confrontation occurred near Sardis around 546 BC. According to Herodotus, Cyrus defeated Croesus through tactical flexibility. His cavalry neutralized the Lydian horsemen by placing camels in front, which caused panic among the Lydian mounts. Sardis fell after a brief siege, and Croesus was captured. Lydia was incorporated into the Achaemenid realm, its treasury financing future campaigns. Persian control extended across Western Asia Minor, and Cyrus left local governance in the hands of satraps, regional governors who answered directly to him. After Lydia, Cyrus turned east to secure his empire's frontiers. Between 545 BC and 539 BC, Persian forces subdued regions including Parthia, Bactria, and Sogdia. These campaigns brought the Persian domain into contact with Central Asian nomadic tribes and secured the trade routes that would later feed into the Silk Road. The Achaemenid frontier extended to the Jaxartes River, modern Syr Darya, marking the empire's easternmost limit at the time. In the west, Cyrus confronted the Neo-Babylonian Empire, then ruled by Nabonidus. Babylon remained the dominant power in Mesopotamia, controlling vast lands and resources. However, Nabonidus faced internal dissent due to his religious policies, which elevated the moon god Sin over Marduk, Babylon's traditional deity. Cyrus capitalized on this discontent. In 539 BC, Persian armies advanced into Babylonian territory, defeating Nabonidus's forces at Opis on the Tigris River. Soon after, the city of Sippar surrendered without resistance. The fall of Babylon was swift. On October 12, 539 BC, Babylon was taken without major destruction. The Babylonian Chronicle states that Cyrus's general, Ugbaru Gobryas, entered the city, and Cyrus followed days later. The transition of power was unusually peaceful for the time. Cyrus issued the Cyrus Cylinder, an inscription written in Akkadian cuneiform that proclaimed his respect for local gods and his intent to restore displaced peoples to their homelands. The most notable group affected was the Jews, exiled in Babylon since 586 BC, whom Cyrus allowed to return to Jerusalem to rebuild their temple. This policy of religious tolerance earned Cyrus widespread legitimacy among conquered populations. By the late 530s BC, the Achaemenid Empire stretched from the Aegean Sea to the Indus Valley. Cyrus reorganized his vast territory into satrapies, each governed by a satrap responsible for taxation, justice, and defense. He maintained a central royal authority, but allowed considerable local autonomy. Roads and relay stations were established for communication and the transport of royal decrees. This administrative model became the foundation for Persian imperial governance for nearly 2 centuries. Cyrus's final campaign took place to the northeast against the Massagetæ, a confederation of nomadic tribes beyond the Araxes River. The campaign's exact date is uncertain, but it is generally placed around 530 BC. According to Herodotus, Cyrus was killed in battle against Queen Tamaris of the Massagetæ, though other accounts, including that of Ctesias, suggest he died peacefully in his homeland. Regardless of the circumstances, his death marked the end of an era of expansion founded on strategy, adaptability, and pragmatic tolerance. Cyrus was buried at Pasargadae, his first capital, in a stone tomb that still stands today. The simple structure reflects his governance style: direct, efficient, and disciplined. The inscription on the tomb, though debated in authenticity, is said to read, "O man, whoever you are and wherever you come from, for I know you will come. I am Cyrus, who founded the empire of the Persians. Do not begrudge me this little earth that covers my body." By the time of his death, Cyrus had created the largest empire the world had yet seen. His rule connected diverse peoples and territories under a unified administrative and cultural system. The principles he established, merit-based governance, regional autonomy, and respect for local customs, would shape Persian policy for generations. His successors inherited a functioning state, an organized bureaucracy, and a reputation for fairness that set the Achaemenid Empire apart from the more brutal regimes of its time. The foundation Cyrus laid became the model for later empires in the ancient world. His reign closed in 530 BC, and his son Cambyses II would inherit a vast, but still consolidating realm, one that now encompassed most of the known world from the Aegean coast to the mountains of Central Asia. After the death of Cyrus the Great in 530 BC, the Achaemenid throne passed to his son, Cambyses II. His succession was accepted without major resistance, likely due to the strong administrative and military framework his father had established. Cambyses had served as governor of Babylon for a time under his father, which gave him practical experience in governance and access to the imperial military. Cambyses inherited an empire that extended from the Aegean Sea to Central Asia, but one major power remained outside Persian control: Egypt. At the time, Egypt was ruled by Pharaoh Amensis II of the 26th dynasty, an experienced leader who had maintained Egypt's independence through careful diplomacy. He had allied with the Greeks, particularly the city of Polycrates of Samos, and hired Greek mercenaries to strengthen his army. Cambyses began preparing for an Egyptian campaign almost immediately after his accession. The decision to invade was not purely driven by ambition. Egypt had supported Babylon during Cyrus's conquest of Mesopotamia, and Amensis had established alliances with the Greek states that threatened Persian influence in the eastern Mediterranean. The conquest of Egypt would complete Persian control of the major powers of the ancient Near East and secure vital trade routes along the Nile and the Red Sea. Before launching his campaign, Cambyses consolidated his western territories. He strengthened control over Phoenicia and Cyprus, both essential for naval operations. The Phoenician fleet, drawn from Sidon, Tyre, and Arvad, became a crucial element of Persian strategy, providing ships for the Egyptian invasion. In 526 BC, Pharaoh Amensis II died, and his son Psamtik III succeeded him. Cambyses interpreted this as an opportunity, since the new pharaoh lacked his father's diplomatic experience. The Persians advanced through the Levant, entering the Sinai Peninsula with support from Arab tribes who provided water supplies across the desert. This alliance was critical. The harsh environment of the Sinai made logistics one of the greatest challenges of the campaign. The decisive confrontation took place in 525 BC at the Battle of Pelusium, near Egypt's eastern frontier. According to Herodotus, Cambyses used a clever psychological tactic, placing animals sacred to the Egyptians, such as cats, at the front of his lines, exploiting the Egyptians' religious reverence for them. The actual military advantage likely came from superior organization and Persian access to Greek mercenaries. The Egyptian army broke, and Psamtik III retreated to Memphis. Memphis was besieged and captured shortly after. The city's fall marked the end of the 26th dynasty. Psamtik III was taken prisoner and later executed following a failed revolt against Persian rule. Egypt was officially annexed into the Achaemenid Empire, becoming the satrapy of Madraya. Cambyses assumed the traditional title of pharaoh, a strategic move designed to legitimize his rule among the Egyptian priesthood and populace. Cambyses implemented policies to maintain Egypt's administrative structure rather than replace it. He allowed the temples to continue their religious functions and ensured that Egyptian priests received state support. His aim was not to dismantle Egyptian society, but to integrate it into the imperial system. However, Persian rule in Egypt faced ongoing local resentment, particularly from the priestly class, who viewed Cambyses as a foreign ruler despite his formal adoption of Egyptian royal titles. The Persian administration in Egypt was run by satraps, with Arianda as the first appointed governor. Arianda maintained a delicate balance between Persian oversight and local autonomy. Persian military garrisons were stationed in key cities, including Memphis, Sais, and Elephantine, to ensure stability and prevent uprisings. Following his success in Egypt, Cambyses sought to extend Persian influence into neighboring regions. He planned campaigns against Libya, Nubia, and the Oasis of Ammon, modern Siwa. These expeditions, launched around 524 BC, met mixed results. While parts of Libya submitted without major conflict, the Nubian campaign failed due to supply shortages and harsh desert conditions. A detachment of troops sent toward the Siwa oasis reportedly vanished in a sandstorm, an event mentioned by Herodotus but unverified archaeologically. Cambyses remained in Egypt for several years, governing through a combination of direct control and delegated authority. However, reports from Greek sources suggest growing instability within the empire during his absence. Around 522 BC, a man named Galmada, often referred to as the false Smyrdes, seized power in Persia, claiming to be Bardia, Cambyses' brother. The real Bardia had likely been executed earlier by Cambyses, fearing a rival claim to the throne. The usurper gained support among the eastern provinces by promising tax relief and military exemptions. When Cambyses learned of the revolt, he prepared to return to Persia but died on the journey under unclear circumstances. Herodotus records that he suffered a fatal wound from his own sword near Ecbatana in Syria, while Ctesias attributes his death to illness. Regardless of the cause, his death left the empire temporarily leaderless and in turmoil. The aftermath of Cambyses' reign was marked by confusion and rebellion. His policies in Egypt and his absence from the Persian heartland allowed the false Smyrdes to gain legitimacy across the empire. The satraps and generals who had served Cyrus and Cambyses faced a moment of crisis. Either accept the pretender's rule or challenge it in the name of continuity. Despite the controversies surrounding his rule, Cambyses achieved what no Persian before him had accomplished: the conquest of Egypt and the unification of the major civilizations of the ancient Near East under a single political authority. His reign extended Persian control from the Indus Valley to the Libyan desert, encompassing nearly all the great river systems of the ancient world: the Tigris, Euphrates, Nile, and Indus. Cambyses' death in 522 BC ended the direct line of succession from Cyrus the Great, setting the stage for one of the most significant power struggles in Achaemenid history, the rise of Darius I, who would not only restore order but elevate the empire to its greatest political and territorial height. After the death of Cambyses II in 522 BC, the Persian Empire entered a period of uncertainty. Across the provinces, uprisings spread as local leaders and pretenders claimed legitimacy. The most significant of these was led by Gaumata, the so-called false Smerdis, who posed as Cambyses' brother Bardia. For several months, Gaumata ruled from Media, abolishing taxes and military service to secure popular favor. His control extended over much of the empire, including Persia and Elam. A group of Persian nobles, led by Darius, son of Hystaspes, uncovered Gaumata's deception. Darius belonged to a collateral branch of the Achaemenid family and held a position as a royal guard. In September 522 BC, Darius and 6 companions assassinated Gaumata at Sikiavati in Media. Darius then declared himself king, claiming divine sanction from Ahura Mazda. His early legitimacy rested on his lineage, his military support, and his swift action in restoring central authority. Almost immediately, the empire erupted in widespread revolts. Between 522 and 520 BC, Darius faced uprisings in Elam, Babylon, Media, Parthia, Margiana, and Egypt. Multiple local rulers declared themselves kings, often adopting old dynastic titles to appeal to regional identity. The most serious of these was in Babylon, where Nidintabel claimed the name Nebuchadnezzar III. Darius marched personally to suppress this revolt. By December 522 BC, Babylon was retaken after a siege, and the rebel leaders were executed. A second Babylonian revolt in 521 BC, led by Araka, Nebuchadnezzar IV, was also crushed within months. The record of these campaigns was preserved on the Behistun inscription, a monumental trilingual text carved into a limestone cliff in western Iran around 520 BC. Written in Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian cuneiform, it detailed Darius's battles, his lineage, and his claim to rule by the grace of Ahura Mazda. The inscription served both as a political statement and a tool of imperial communication, establishing Darius as the rightful successor to Cyrus and Cambyses. Having restored stability, Darius reorganized the empire into a more efficient administrative structure. He divided the territory into approximately 20 satrapies, provinces, each governed by a satrap responsible for tax collection, security, and justice. This system balanced local autonomy with central oversight. The satraps were often drawn from Persian nobility, but Darius appointed royal inspectors known as the King Esais to monitor them and report directly to the crown. To support this structure, Darius standardized the empire's financial and economic systems. Each satrapy was assessed a fixed annual tribute, paid in silver or gold. This replaced irregular levies with predictable revenue, which strengthened the royal treasury. To facilitate trade and taxation, he introduced a uniform currency system centered on the gold daric and the silver siglos, coins that circulated widely from Egypt to India. Darius also implemented a consistent system of weights and measures to eliminate local discrepancies in trade. This reform encouraged interregional commerce and reinforced the empire's economic unity. The Royal Road, extending over 2,700 kilometers from Sardis in Anatolia to Susa in Elam, became the backbone of imperial communication. Relay stations with fresh horses allowed couriers to travel the entire distance in about a week, a major logistical achievement in the ancient world. Administrative capitals were established across key regions. Persepolis served as a ceremonial center, while Susa and Ecbatana functioned as major administrative hubs. Babylon retained its role as an economic and cultural center, reflecting Darius's policy of maintaining existing urban institutions. He initiated large construction projects at Susa and Persepolis, employing artisans and materials from across the empire: stone from Elam, cedar from Lebanon, and gold from Bactria. Darius strengthened the judicial system by codifying laws and promoting consistency across diverse populations. Local legal traditions were preserved, but ultimate judicial authority rested with the king and his appointed judges. In Egypt, Darius commissioned a revision of legal texts and supported temple activities to maintain the cooperation of the priesthood. Foreign policy under Darius combined consolidation with expansion. In the east, he extended control beyond the Indus River, forming the satrapy of Hindush around 518 BC. Administrative centers were established in Gandhara and the Indus Valley to secure trade routes and access to resources. In the west, Darius launched campaigns into Thrace and Macedonia between 513 and 512 BC. Although these expeditions brought limited long-term control, they demonstrated Persian influence reaching into southeastern Europe. Darius also reasserted Persian authority over Egypt, which had revolted upon his accession. After suppressing resistance, he pursued infrastructure development, including the reopening of the Canal of the Pharaohs, a navigable waterway linking the Nile to the Red Sea. An inscription at Suez records his accomplishment, describing how Persian ships sailed between Egypt and Persia. This canal promoted trade between the Mediterranean and the Indian Ocean, integrating Egypt into the wider imperial economy. Religion under Darius reflected the growing influence of Zoroastrian principles, particularly the worship of Ahura Mazda as the supreme god. Royal inscriptions consistently emphasized truth, Asha, and denounced lies, Druj, aligning political legitimacy with moral order. However, Darius practiced religious tolerance, allowing local deities and temples to continue. In Babylon, he restored certain temple privileges, and in Egypt, he was depicted according to pharaonic conventions. The empire's architecture and art during Darius's reign embodied imperial ideology. At Persepolis, reliefs depicted representatives from all satrapies bringing tribute to the king. The visual message was one of unity under central authority without erasing local identity. Building inscriptions credited Ahura Mazda for royal success, reinforcing divine sanction for Achaemenid rule. By the later years of his reign, Darius had transformed the Achaemenid state from a loosely connected collection of territories into a coherent imperial system. Its structure, based on standardized administration, economic regulation, and communication, allowed for control over diverse populations stretching from the Aegean to the Indus. Throughout his governance, Darius relied on a network of officials, scribes, and military garrisons. The Persepolis fortification tablets, dating from his time, record detailed rations for workers, animal inventories, and distributions of supplies, illustrating the precision of Persian administration. The empire stability and prosperity under Darius made it the largest and most efficiently managed state in the ancient world, linking 3 continents through political and economic order. Under Darius I, the Persian Empire reached an unprecedented level of administrative sophistication. What Cyrus and Cambyses had conquered, Darius organized. His reign established a model of imperial governance that could sustain vast distances, diverse cultures, and complex economies. The transformation was not only political but deeply structural, affecting taxation, trade, agriculture, and record-keeping across all satrapies. Darius's economic policy began with the satrapy system he had formalized. Each of the 20 provinces was assigned a fixed annual tribute, calculated according to its productivity and resources. This arrangement was described by Herodotus in Histories, Book 3, where the historian outlined the assessments, such as 1,000 talents of silver from Babylon and 360 talents from India, the latter in gold dust. These tributes were paid partly in coin, partly in kind, and collected under strict oversight. The stability of these revenues allowed the central treasury at Persepolis and Susa to maintain reserves of precious metals, ensuring a consistent financial foundation for the empire's administration and military. The gold daric introduced by Darius became the principal coin of the empire. Weighing approximately 8.4 grams and featuring the image of the great king holding a bow and spear, it symbolized both royal authority and fiscal stability. The daric was used in international trade from Egypt to Asia Minor and even found circulation in Greek markets. Alongside it, the silver siglos served in everyday transactions. These standardized coins replaced local systems of barter and irregular silver ingots, making trade more predictable and taxation more efficient. To complement currency reform, Darius standardized weights and measures. Stone and metal weights marked with royal symbols have been uncovered from Babylon to Persepolis, confirming a consistent system. This reform allowed merchants, farmers, and craftsmen to operate across borders with a clear understanding of value and exchange, promoting integration across the empire's economic zones. Trade routes flourished under Darius's rule. The most significant of these was the Royal Road, which extended approximately 2,700 kilometers from Sardis in western Anatolia to Susa near the Persian Gulf. Along this route, rest stations were placed at intervals of roughly 25 miles, each stocked with food, water, and fresh horses for couriers. Messages could travel from one end of the empire to the other in under 10 days, a speed unmatched in the ancient world. This infrastructure not only allowed efficient communication, but also stimulated commerce by ensuring safe passage for traders and goods. Parallel to the Royal Road, maritime trade expanded through the Persian Gulf and the Red Sea. Darius commissioned the reopening of the Canal of the Pharaohs, connecting the Nile to the Red Sea, enabling ships to sail from Egypt to Persia directly. Egyptian inscriptions, such as those found at Suez, record the construction under Darius's supervision. This waterway linked the Mediterranean economy with the Indian Ocean trade, facilitating the movement of grain, textiles, spices, and precious materials. Persian control of ports along the Arabian coast, including Gera and Tylos, modern Bahrain, further strengthened maritime commerce. The empire's economy rested heavily on agriculture, which was managed and recorded at an unprecedented scale. The Persepolis fortification tablets, a collection of Elamite administrative records dated between 509 and 494 BC, document rations, livestock, and land management across the imperial heartland. They detail the distribution of food and wine to workers, craftsmen, and travelers, as well as the issuing of seeds and the collection of produce. These records reveal a bureaucracy capable of managing agricultural output across multiple provinces with precision and accountability. Irrigation and land development were crucial in sustaining agricultural productivity. Persian engineers constructed qanats, underground channels that carried water from mountain aquifers to dry plains. These systems transformed arid regions into fertile farmland, particularly in Fars, Parthia, and Bactria. Darius's administration encouraged the building of qanats and the maintenance of canals in Mesopotamia and Egypt, ensuring year-round cultivation and a reliable grain supply. The empire's labor system combined free labor, corvée service, and enslaved workers. In large construction projects like Persepolis, workers from various satrapies received standardized rations of grain, wine, and livestock, as evidenced in the fortification tablets. Women and children also appear in these records, often in family groups, suggesting a semi-free labor status under state supervision. The inclusion of multiple ethnic groups, Elamites, Persians, Lydians, and Babylonians, illustrates the diversity of the workforce that sustained Persian infrastructure. Administrative efficiency extended beyond economic regulation. Darius developed a record-keeping system that relied on local languages and scripts, allowing each satrapy to communicate effectively with the central administration. Aramaic served as the empire's lingua franca for official correspondence, due to its adaptability and widespread understanding. Documents written in Aramaic on papyrus or parchment have been found as far apart as Egypt and Bactria, confirming its administrative reach. The postal system, called the Angarium, was an essential part of governance. Couriers carried messages between capitals using horses stationed along the royal road and other routes. Herodotus recorded that neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor darkness delayed these couriers, an early recognition of Persian logistical discipline. The same routes also facilitated troop movements and the transport of supplies, binding the empire's farthest territories to the royal center. Regional administration operated with a balance of autonomy and supervision. Satraps collected tribute, maintained garrisons, and enforced royal law, but their actions were subject to periodic inspections by the king's eyes. These royal agents traveled unannounced, reviewed local accounts, and reported directly to the king. Inscriptions and administrative letters reveal that this system curbed corruption and prevented the accumulation of independent satrapal power, though later rulers would struggle to maintain the same control. Religious institutions played a role in economic management. Temples and sanctuaries were significant landowners and employers. In Babylon, the temples of Marduk and Nabu continued to receive royal endowments. Darius's inscriptions show that he respected local cults, maintaining their privileges to ensure loyalty. In Egypt, he funded the restoration of the Temple of Neith at Sais and adopted traditional pharaonic titles to legitimize his rule. This policy of integration, rather than suppression, stabilized economic relations between the central government and local elites. Trade connected the Persian heartland with distant markets. From India came gold, ivory, and spices. From Egypt, grain and linen. From Anatolia, metals and fine horses. From Phoenicia, timber and skilled shipbuilders. The Persian Empire functioned as an economic corridor linking the Mediterranean, Mesopotamian, and Indus civilizations. Greek sources mention that merchants from the Aegean traded freely under Persian protection, provided they paid customs duties and respected local authority. Darius's reforms also influenced military logistics. The empire's wealth funded large-scale projects and standing garrisons, ensuring supplies could reach frontier regions. The standardized taxation and road systems allowed for the rapid mobilization of troops, essential for maintaining control over such vast territories. Through these reforms, Darius transformed the Persian Empire into an integrated economic organism. Every satrapy contributed to the collective prosperity, connected by systems of taxation, communication, and commerce that functioned with remarkable reliability for its time. These mechanisms provided the material foundation upon which the empire's political and cultural achievements would rest in the decades that followed. During the reign of Darius I, the Achaemenid Empire reached a level of cultural and administrative unity that reflected the diversity of its subjects. The empire extended from the Aegean coast to the Indus Valley, encompassing dozens of languages, religions, and traditions. Darius understood that political control required not only military power, but also cultural integration. His policies sought to create an imperial identity that respected local customs, while emphasizing loyalty to the king and the moral authority of Ahura Mazda. The Achaemenid royal court became the center of this new imperial culture. At Persepolis and Susa, artisans and administrators from all corners of the empire gathered. The architecture, art, and inscriptions commissioned by Darius expressed a consistent message of order, diversity, and divine legitimacy. The palaces at Persepolis, begun around 518 BC, were built on a massive terrace of stone, covering more than 125,000 square meters. Their reliefs depict delegations from each satrapy bringing tribute, figures identified by their clothing, hairstyles, and gifts. These carvings were not intended as scenes of conquest, but as a representation of harmony under Persian rule. Each delegation approached the king calmly, reinforcing the image of a stable empire sustained through cooperation rather than violence. The construction methods at Persepolis demonstrated a high degree of organization. Inscriptions on foundation tablets record the names of workers and the sources of materials. Cedar wood came from Lebanon, ivory from India, and gold from Bactria. Teams of stonemasons, metalworkers, and scribes operated under royal supervision. The administrative records found in the Persepolis fortification tablets show rations distributed to workers in measured quantities of grain, wine, and livestock, proving that the workforce was salaried and managed systematically. These details illustrate how the empire's bureaucracy extended into the realm of art and architecture, ensuring precision in both economic and cultural expression. Art and symbolism served political purposes. The Achaemenid artistic style blended elements from earlier civilizations, Assyrian reliefs, Elamite motifs, and Egyptian symmetry, into a new imperial aesthetic. Figures in the palace reliefs appear idealized and orderly, avoiding individual portraits. The king is always central, elevated above attendants or officials, embodying divine sanction and royal justice. The repetitive iconography of lions attacking bulls, often interpreted as a representation of the triumph of order over chaos, reflected the Zoroastrian principle of Asha, truth, and cosmic balance. Language policy reinforced unity across cultural divisions. Darius adopted Old Persian cuneiform as the official language for royal inscriptions, while Aramaic functioned as the administrative language of the empire. This dual-language approach reflected both Persian identity and practical governance. Old Persian, used sparingly in monumental texts such as the Behistun and Persepolis inscriptions, affirmed the authority of the ruling dynasty. Aramaic, already widespread across the Near East, facilitated day-to-day administration and record-keeping from Egypt to Bactria. The religious ideology of the Achaemenids, particularly under Darius, reflected the principles of early Zoroastrian thought. In his inscriptions, Darius repeatedly invokes Ahura Mazda, the creator of heaven and earth and the source of his authority. The Behistun inscription declares that Darius' victories and kingship were achieved by the will of Ahura Mazda, and that he ruled according to Asha, truth and order, while opposing Darius, falsehood and disorder. This theological framing served as the moral justification for political power. The king presented himself not only as a ruler, but as the upholder of divine truth, responsible for maintaining justice throughout his dominions. Despite this emphasis on Ahura Mazda, Darius did not impose Zoroastrianism as a state religion. His administration tolerated and often supported local cults and priesthoods. In Babylon, the temples of Marduk and Nabu continued to function with royal endowments. Darius's inscriptions in Egypt show him adopting pharaonic titles and making offerings to traditional Egyptian gods. At Susa and Persepolis, archaeological evidence indicates the coexistence of multiple religious practices, including Elamite, Mesopotamian, and Iranian traditions. This pluralism allowed local elites to retain their religious authority, reducing resistance to imperial control. The concept of kingship was both administrative and sacred. In official inscriptions, Darius referred to himself as the King of Kings, a title that symbolized his authority over subordinate rulers while acknowledging their continued existence. The empire's hierarchy thus extended from the divine order through the king to satraps, local governors, and city officials. The royal audience rituals, performed in palace halls such as the Apadana, embodied this structure. Delegates from each province presented tribute and affirmed loyalty, while the king, seated on a high throne, received them in formal silence. This ritual display reinforced the central idea of unity under Persian leadership. Education and literacy were essential tools of administration. The use of scribes trained in Aramaic and Elamite ensured the smooth functioning of the bureaucracy. The Persepolis archives contain thousands of tablets written in Elamite, showing systematic record-keeping of food, livestock, and labor distributions. These documents confirm that the empire operated on written orders and detailed accounting, a level of organization unprecedented for its time. Cultural integration extended to clothing, art, and court ceremony. Persian nobles wore long robes with pleated folds, symbolizing rank and modesty. The median attire, trousers, and knee-length coats, was commonly adopted for practicality in military and travel contexts. The fusion of these regional styles created a recognizable court dress that projected unity. Court etiquette was equally formalized. Access to the king was tightly controlled, and audiences required multiple levels of approval. Greek sources later described this as excessive, but within Persian administration, it served to maintain order and distance around the figure of the monarch. The empire's monumental inscriptions provide insight into its official worldview. At Persepolis, Darius recorded, "By the favor of Ahura Mazda, this palace I built. May Ahura Mazda protect me and my kingdom." Such statements, found across royal building sites, expressed a recurring formula of divine support, royal responsibility, and moral order. They were intended to remind subjects that prosperity depended on loyalty to both king and cosmic truth. Cultural policy under Darius also emphasized historical continuity. He consciously linked his reign with that of Cyrus the Great, presenting himself as a restorer of rightful rule rather than a usurper. The inscriptions at Behistun and Susa repeatedly reference the law of Ahura Mazda and the house of Achaemenids, establishing dynastic legitimacy that transcended individual rulers. Music, feasting, and ceremonial processions were parts of court life that reinforced hierarchy and unity. Archaeological finds at Persepolis, including decorative vessels and carved furniture, suggest that banquets were formal affairs involving representatives of multiple nations. The consumption of wine and the distribution of food recorded in the fortification tablets demonstrate state management even of social functions. Such gatherings strengthened political bonds among elite officials from distant regions. The empire's calendar and timekeeping practices also reveal administrative precision. The Persians used a solar calendar divided into 12 months of 30 days each, with intercalary adjustments. Royal inscriptions often dated events according to regnal years, ensuring consistent record-keeping across the provinces. The regularity of time-keeping symbolized the broader order Darius sought to impose on the empire. While Achaemenid religion under Darius was rooted in Zoroastrian ethics, it remained inclusive. Fire altars depicted in art from Pasargadae and Persepolis indicate reverence for fire as a symbol of purity, but no centralized fire temples existed at this stage. Offerings and sacrifices were made to Ahura Mazda, local gods, and ancestral spirits alike. The absence of coercive religious policy helped integrate conquered peoples, allowing the empire to expand without widespread cultural suppression. Cultural exchange was constant across the empire's frontiers. Greek mercenaries served in Persian armies. Lydian and Ionian craftsmen worked in Persian palaces, and Babylonian scribes trained administrators in cuneiform record-keeping. The empire's structure encouraged movement and interaction, creating a network of shared techniques and ideas. This environment produced a distinctly Persian imperial identity, one that absorbed and managed diversity through disciplined administration, tolerance, and symbolic unity under the great king. The rule of Darius I represented the peak of Achaemenid administrative development. When he took power in 522 BC, the empire was large but loosely governed. His reforms transformed it into an organized structure that could endure for generations. The empire stretched across approximately 8 million square kilometers, containing more than 20 satrapies, each with distinct economic and cultural systems. Darius's policies unified them through taxation, codified laws, standardized currency, and a centralized bureaucracy. The foundation of Darius's system was the satrapy, a provincial unit governed by a satrap, or protector of the realm. These satraps were often members of Persian noble families or loyal local elites. Each satrap oversaw taxation, justice, and defense within his province. To prevent rebellion or corruption, Darius limited their autonomy. Military garrisons and royal inspectors, known as the eyes and ears of the king, operated independently of satrapal authority and reported directly to the central administration. This network allowed the king to maintain oversight without the need for constant military intervention. To ensure fiscal stability, Darius introduced a standardized taxation system. Each satrapy was assessed a fixed annual tribute based on its productivity. Herodotus later recorded these figures, noting that wealthier regions such as Babylonia and Egypt paid in silver or gold, while less affluent provinces provided goods such as horses or grain. The revenue supported the royal treasury at Susa and Persepolis, as well as the maintenance of the army and construction of imperial projects. This shift from irregular tribute to fixed taxation established predictability, enabling long-term planning across the empire. Coinage reform accompanied the taxation system. Darius introduced the gold daric and the silver siglos, establishing one of the earliest consistent bimetallic currencies in recorded history. The daric, weighing roughly 8.4 grams, bore the image of the king as an archer, a visual declaration of royal authority. The new currency facilitated trade between distant provinces, replacing barter with standardized monetary value. This development strengthened economic integration from Anatolia to India and increased the empire's commercial efficiency. Communication across the empire required a reliable infrastructure. Darius constructed and expanded the Royal Road, a network stretching approximately 2,700 kilometers from Sardis in Lydia to Susa in Elam. Along its length, relay stations and rest houses provided fresh horses and supplies for couriers. Official messengers could travel the entire distance in about 7 days, an extraordinary speed for the ancient world. This system allowed decrees, military orders, and administrative records to circulate quickly. The Greek historian Herodotus described it as unparalleled in efficiency, remarking that neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor darkness delayed the couriers, a sentiment that reflected Persian logistical discipline rather than literary exaggeration. The administrative language of the empire was Aramaic, chosen for its simplicity and widespread use across the Near East. Royal scribes used it to record transactions, correspondence, and decrees. The discovery of the Persepolis fortification tablets and other archives demonstrates the scale of this bureaucracy. Thousands of clay tablets detail allocations of food, livestock, and labor. Each entry followed standardized formats, reflecting strict accountability. The use of Aramaic, Elamite, and Old Persian in parallel ensured that local officials could communicate while preserving imperial oversight. Darius codified laws and legal procedures across the empire. While local customs and legal traditions remained intact, royal law, issued in the name of the king, took precedence. Provincial judges were required to interpret cases in accordance with both local norms and imperial decrees. In practice, this system balanced flexibility with authority. It allowed conquered peoples to maintain familiar legal structures while acknowledging Persian sovereignty. The administrative divisions also extended to the military organization. Each satrapy was responsible for supplying troops during campaigns. Provincial contingents retained their native weapons and tactics, contributing to a diverse but coordinated imperial army. Persian commanders ensured discipline and cohesion through standardized equipment and centralized logistics. The army's composition, infantry, cavalry, and elite immortals, reflected the empire's structure. diverse in origin but united under Persian leadership. Trade and infrastructure supported both the economy and administration. Darius commissioned the construction of canals and roads to link regional markets. One of his most significant engineering projects was the canal between the Nile and the Red Sea, an early precursor to the Suez Canal. Inscriptions along the route record his claim. "I ordered this canal dug from the river called the Nile, which flows in Egypt, to the sea that goes from Persia." This project facilitated trade between Egypt, Arabia, and the Persian Gulf, connecting maritime and overland routes within imperial control. The royal capitals, Persepolis, Susa, and Ecbatana, served complementary administrative functions. Persepolis was primarily ceremonial, hosting annual audiences and recording tributes. Susa functioned as the political capital, where decrees were issued and archives maintained. Ecbatana, located in the Median Highlands, provided a summer retreat and strategic position for overseeing the western provinces. This rotation of capitals reflected the empire's vast geography and Darius' preference for mobility and governance. Darius' administration maintained religious neutrality while promoting loyalty to Ahura Mazda as the divine source of authority. This tolerance was practical as well as ideological. By supporting local temples and priesthoods, Darius secured cooperation from conquered populations. In Egypt, for example, he restored temple revenues and adopted the titles of pharaoh. In Babylon, he continued the practice of participating in the New Year festival honoring Marduk. This inclusive policy prevented cultural resistance and reinforced the perception of the king as a legitimate ruler across different lands. Economically, the empire thrived under these reforms. The standardized taxation and currency allowed for consistent trade along the royal road and maritime routes of the Persian Gulf and Indian Ocean. Grain from Egypt, textiles from Lydia, spices from India, and metals from Bactria circulated freely. Markets along major routes became centers of exchange, supported by garrisons that ensured security for merchants. This commercial stability was a key factor in the empire's longevity. To monitor his officials, Darius relied on an intelligence network. Inspectors, often referred to as royal secretaries, traveled the empire without notice, investigating provincial administration and reporting directly to the king. Their findings could lead to swift punishment or reward, depending on loyalty and efficiency. This surveillance system prevented provincial governors from consolidating independent power and maintained the integrity of the bureaucracy. The ideological foundation of Darius's administration was recorded in monumental inscriptions. At Behistun, carved into a limestone cliff along the main route between Babylon and Ecbatana, Darius recounted his rise to power and his suppression of revolts. The trilingual inscription, in Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, served as a declaration of legitimacy and a model of royal communication. It affirmed that Darius ruled by the will of Ahura Mazda and governed according to truth and justice. The relief above the text depicted Darius with his foot on a defeated rebel, symbolizing divine order prevailing over falsehood. The administrative system of Darius relied on hierarchy and precision rather than coercion. The satraps ensured local governance, the inspectors enforced accountability, and the royal road connected the empire's center to its peripheries. Currency reforms stabilized the economy, and written records provided oversight. Each of these elements functioned within a framework that emphasized loyalty to the king as the embodiment of order. The result was an empire that combined central authority with regional flexibility. Darius's reforms established patterns of administration that later influenced empires from the Hellenistic to the Islamic periods. The Achaemenid system under his rule was not merely territorial. It was structural, connecting cultures and economies through uniform governance supported by efficient communication and a shared conception of imperial justice. Darius I began constructing Persepolis around 518 BC, establishing it as the ceremonial capital of the Achaemenid Empire. Situated near the city of Pasargadae in present-day Fars province, Persepolis was strategically located between major trade routes and served as a visual statement of imperial unity. It did not replace Susa or Ecbatana as administrative centers, but complemented them. Each city had a distinct role in the empire's structure. Susa handled official decrees and archives, Persepolis hosted ceremonies and receptions, and Ecbatana functioned as a military and summer capital. Persepolis embodied the empire's administrative and ideological structure. Its terraces, palaces, and reliefs reflected both Persian identity and the diversity of its provinces. The Apadana, or audience hall, was the centerpiece. It measured approximately 60 by 60 meters and was supported by 72 columns rising over 20 meters high. Reliefs along the staircases depicted delegates from across the empire bringing tribute. Armenians with horses, Lydians with vessels, Indians with gold dust, and Egyptians with linen. These images were not propaganda, but a visual record of imperial order. The procession showed each subject people maintaining their native dress and customs, reinforcing the Achaemenid model of governance through inclusion rather than erasure. Susa, located on the Karkeh River, remained the administrative capital. Royal inscriptions identify it as the place where decrees were issued and where Darius and later kings kept archives. The city was also a hub for trade between Mesopotamia and the Iranian plateau. Excavations have revealed administrative tablets written in Elamite, Babylonian, and Aramaic, evidence of a multilingual bureaucracy operating under strict record-keeping standards. The royal palace at Susa, built under Darius's supervision, combined Mesopotamian brickwork with Persian stone architecture. Imported materials, cedar from Lebanon, gold from Sardis, and lapis lazuli from Bactria, demonstrated the empire's logistical coordination. The empire's social order reflected this administrative precision. At the top stood the king, followed by the royal family, nobles, and satraps. Below them were officials, soldiers, artisans, farmers, and enslaved laborers. Persian nobility were rewarded with land and privileges in exchange for military service and loyalty. The class of scribes and administrators was essential to maintaining daily operations, especially in taxation, logistics, and communication. Records from Persepolis and Susa describe the empire's labor system in detail. Workers on royal projects were not primarily enslaved. Many were hired laborers, receiving rations of grain, wine, and beer. Women also appear in these records, employed in weaving workshops and receiving equal rations relative to their rank. These administrative tablets, numbering in the tens of thousands, show a structured economic model where production, distribution, and labor were meticulously tracked. Payments were often made in kind, though the Daric coinage facilitated broader exchange. Religion within the Achaemenid state remained diverse. The kings adhered to Zoroastrian principles, acknowledging Ahura Mazda as the supreme deity. However, their rule did not enforce uniform worship. Inscriptions consistently refer to Ahura Mazda as the creator and source of legitimacy, but do not attempt to suppress other gods. Darius and his successors sponsored temples in Babylon, Egypt, and Asia Minor. Local priesthoods continued to perform their traditional rites. This policy of religious accommodation strengthened political stability, allowing subject peoples to retain spiritual autonomy while recognizing the king's divine sanction. Education and literacy in Achaemenid Persia were primarily limited to the administrative class. Scribes trained in multiple languages to maintain the empire's multilingual documentation. The use of Aramaic as the lingua franca simplified communication, while Elamite and Old Persian were used for monumental inscriptions. Royal decrees were disseminated through written documents and oral messengers to ensure accessibility in diverse regions. The consistency of terminology across the empire's records demonstrates a centralized training system for scribes, likely managed under the supervision of royal secretaries. Persian architecture during Darius's reign reflected a synthesis of regional influences. The columned halls of Persepolis drew from Median wooden structures, while decorative motifs originated in Assyria and Egypt. Reliefs combined realism and symbolic order, depicting not warfare but harmony. The recurring imagery of royal attendants, lions, and lotus flowers represented strength and continuity. Engineering achievements extended beyond architecture. The Persians developed advanced irrigation systems, including qanats, underground channels that transported water from highlands to arid plains. This technology supported agriculture and urban growth across the Iranian plateau and beyond. The royal court functioned as both a political and economic institution. It was mobile, traveling between capitals according to the season. Royal audiences, known as courtiers gatherings, were occasions where tribute and reports were presented. The king's decisions were issued through written decrees sealed with his emblem. The bureaucracy ensured that these decrees reached all provinces through the royal postal network. Couriers, mounted on fast horses, moved messages across the royal road in a matter of days. Each station provided food, lodging, and new mounts, ensuring uninterrupted communication. The Persian military organization under Darius supported this administrative structure. The standing army, centered on the immortals, numbered around 10,000 elite troops. They were distinguished by identical armor, equipment, and discipline. In addition to the immortals, the empire maintained regional forces recruited from its satrapies. Each province contributed units according to local specialization: cavalry from Bactria, archers from Sogdiana, and infantry from Asia Minor. The army's logistical support mirrored civil administration, relying on a system of supply depots along major routes. Trade under Darius linked the Mediterranean, Central Asia, India, and Egypt. Persian control of major routes allowed secure passage for merchants. The royal road facilitated land trade, while Persian fleets patrolled the Persian Gulf and Red Sea. Imports included gold, ivory, and spices. Exports consisted of textiles, silver, and agricultural produce. Tax records show the importance of coastal provinces such as Phoenicia and Egypt in maritime trade. The use of standardized weights and measures under Darius further stabilized commerce, encouraging foreign merchants to operate under imperial protection. Society within the empire reflected a hierarchical but flexible order. The Persian elite maintained estates administered by local managers. Common farmers worked the land under a system that combined taxation with corvée labor, temporary service on state projects such as roads or canals. Slavery existed, but it was not the foundation of the economy. The majority of laborers were free or semi-free workers engaged under state supervision. The economy depended more on tribute and trade than on forced labor. Cultural interaction across the empire was constant. With over 20 ethnic groups represented in imperial administration, languages, clothing styles, and artistic motifs blended. This interaction created a distinct Achaemenid aesthetic recognizable in art and architecture from Egypt to Central Asia. Pottery, seals, and jewelry from the period show consistent designs, often featuring royal symbols like the winged disc of Ahura Mazda or the royal archer. Festivals and ceremonies at Persepolis reinforced imperial unity. The most important was the Nowruz celebration, marking the Persian New Year. Delegations from across the empire gathered to offer gifts and renew allegiance. The event symbolized the cyclical renewal of royal authority and the continuity of order under Ahura Mazda's protection. These ceremonies were formal rather than emotional, serving administrative and symbolic purposes. The Achaemenid administrative model was not static. During Darius's reign, officials recorded revisions to tax assessments, reallocation of labor, and adjustments to road routes. This flexibility distinguished the empire from earlier Near Eastern systems. Governance depended not on rigid hierarchy, but on responsive coordination between the king and his satraps. Records from Persepolis indicate that royal officials regularly audited supply lists and redistributed resources based on changing demands. In addition to civil administration, Darius emphasized codified procedures for succession and legitimacy. Royal inscriptions identified the king's lineage, tracing it to Achaemenids, and affirmed divine approval. This formalization reduced disputes over succession and reinforced continuity. In later periods, this emphasis on documented legitimacy influenced subsequent imperial traditions, including those of the Seleucid and Parthian states. By the late reign of Darius, the empire represented a stable administrative organism supported by communication, law, and symbolic order. Its capitals embodied this system in physical form. Susa as the seat of bureaucracy, Persepolis as the image of unity, and Ecbatana as the command post of defense. Society was structured but integrated, held together by shared systems rather than imposed uniformity. Between 518 and 486 BC, the Achaemenid Empire reached its administrative and architectural peak. The structures established during this period continued to operate under Darius's successors with minimal modification. The combination of centralized authority, economic stability, and cultural tolerance defined Persian imperial governance for the next 2 centuries. When Darius I died in 486 BC, his son Xerxes I inherited the throne of the Achaemenid Empire. The transition followed established royal protocols, confirmed by the nobility and supported by the royal guard. Xerxes had been groomed for leadership and had previously served as governor in Babylon. Upon his accession, he immediately faced challenges in consolidating control over the vast empire his father had built. In the early years of his reign, Xerxes faced revolts in Egypt and Babylon, both of which sought to exploit the uncertainty following Darius's death. Egypt had rebelled in 486 BC, and Babylon followed soon after. Xerxes led a campaign to suppress Egypt in 484 BC. The rebellion was quickly subdued, and Egypt was reabsorbed into the empire's administrative framework. The Persian satrap Achaemenids, Xerxes' brother, was appointed governor, ensuring tighter control. In Babylon, resistance was eliminated by dismantling local autonomy. Xerxes removed the title of King of Babylon from his own royal titulature, an indication that he intended no shared sovereignty with traditional Mesopotamian kingship. The sacred statue of Marduk, once used in Babylonian coronation ceremonies, was reportedly removed or destroyed, marking a shift from Darius's policy of local accommodation. With the internal revolts resolved, Xerxes turned his attention westward. His father's earlier invasion of Greece in 490 BC had ended with the Persian defeat at Marathon. Darius had intended a renewed campaign but died before its execution. Xerxes resumed this objective, not only to avenge Marathon, but to reassert Persian authority over the Greek city-states that had aided the Ionian revolt decades earlier. Preparations began around 483 BC and lasted for several years. The Persian administration coordinated an unprecedented mobilization. Forces from all 20 satrapies were ordered to contribute men, ships, and supplies. Herodotus, though often exaggerated, described a vast army including contingents from Persia, Media, Egypt, Phoenicia, Lydia, and Bactria. The logistical requirements were immense. Engineers constructed depots along the route from Sardis to the Hellespont and built 2 bridges of boats across the strait to allow the army to cross from Asia into Europe. These bridges, anchored with massive cables and stabilized by boats, represented a significant feat of engineering for the time. Additionally, a canal was dug through the Athos Peninsula to avoid the stormy waters that had destroyed a Persian fleet in 492 BC. In 480 BC, Xerxes set out from Sardis. His army marched through Thrace and Macedonia, absorbing local forces into the campaign. The Greek city-states, recognizing the scale of the invasion, attempted to form a unified resistance under Spartan leadership. The first major confrontation occurred at Thermopylae in central Greece. At Thermopylae, a narrow mountain pass, a small Greek force led by King Leonidas of Sparta attempted to block the Persian advance. Despite Greek courage, the pass was eventually outflanked after local guides revealed a secondary path. The defenders were surrounded and defeated. The Persian army advanced into central Greece, while the fleet moved south along the coast. The capture of Thermopylae opened the road to Athens. Athens had been evacuated before the Persian arrival. The Persians entered the city and burned it, including the Acropolis, in retribution for Greek resistance and the destruction of Sardis decades earlier. Xerxes then prepared for a decisive naval confrontation at Salamis, near the Athenian coast. The Battle of Salamis, fought later in 480 BC, marked a turning point. The Persian navy, composed largely of Phoenician, Egyptian, and Ionian ships, faced a smaller but more maneuverable Greek fleet under Themistocles. The confined waters of the strait neutralized the numerical advantage of the Persians. The Greek triremes executed coordinated ramming maneuvers, causing heavy Persian losses. Xerxes, who observed the battle from a throne on shore, witnessed his fleet's defeat. Despite this setback, the Persian land army remained formidable. Following Salamis, Xerxes decided to withdraw the majority of his forces to Asia, likely to prevent overextension and to secure his supply lines. He left a strong army in Greece under the command of his general Mardonius. The next year, in 479 BC, Mardonius faced the combined Greek forces at the Battle of Plataea. The Persian army, despite its size and diverse composition, was defeated. The same year, the Persian fleet suffered another loss at Mycale off the coast of Asia Minor. These twin defeats ended Persian expansion into mainland Greece. The failure of the Greek campaign did not diminish the overall stability of the Achaemenid Empire. Persia retained control over Asia Minor, the Aegean Islands, and the coastal territories that had supported its logistics. However, Xerxes' focus shifted inward after the campaign. He returned to Susa and Persepolis, where construction and internal development resumed. Between 479 and 465 BC, Xerxes oversaw major architectural projects at Persepolis, continuing the work begun by Darius. Additions included the completion of the Hall of 100 Columns and further reliefs depicting royal processions and tribute bearers. These works emphasized continuity and authority, projecting stability after the costly Greek expedition. The administrative system functioned efficiently under established satraps, ensuring regular tribute and communication across the empire. Diplomatically, Persia maintained relations with Greek states through intermediaries. Some Greek cities, particularly in Asia Minor, continued under Persian influence. The Persian fleet, though weakened, still dominated the eastern Mediterranean. The empire's wealth and territorial expanse remained unrivaled. Xerxes' later reign was marked by a gradual increase in court intrigue and administrative complexity. The royal court at Persepolis became more ceremonial, and the king's reliance on trusted advisors grew. According to Greek accounts, Xerxes' personal involvement in governance diminished in his later years, though administrative records suggest continued activity in taxation and construction management. In 465 BC, Xerxes I was assassinated in his palace, reportedly by Artabanus, a high-ranking court official. The motives remain uncertain. Ancient sources suggest palace conspiracy, possibly involving the royal guard. Xerxes' death initiated a brief succession crisis, which was resolved with the accession of his son Artaxerxes I. Xerxes' reign represents the high watermark of Persian imperial ambition. His administration maintained the empire's structure, extended monumental architecture, and preserved its economic systems. Despite the military failure in Greece, the Persian Empire under Xerxes remained the dominant power in the Near East, stretching from the Indus Valley to the Nile and from the Persian Gulf to the Aegean. After Xerxes I was assassinated in 465 BC, the Achaemenid throne passed to his son Artaxerxes I Longimanus. His accession was secured after suppressing a palace conspiracy. Greek accounts attribute the murder of Xerxes to Artabanus, commander of the royal guard, who allegedly attempted to place himself on the throne. Artaxerxes, with the support of loyal nobles, executed Artabanus and his supporters, restoring control within the palace. The early years of his rule were defined by consolidation rather than expansion. Artaxerxes maintained the empire's administrative framework established under Darius I and continued by Xerxes. The satrapal system remained effective, though local autonomy grew in distant regions. His reign coincided with renewed unrest in Egypt, where native rulers attempted to break free from Persian control. Around 460 BC, Inaros, a Libyan prince supported by Athenian forces, led a large-scale revolt in Egypt. Persian troops were initially defeated, and Memphis was captured by the rebels. Artaxerxes dispatched his general Megabyzus, satrap of Syria, to suppress the uprising. After a prolonged campaign lasting until 454 BC, Persian forces regained control. The Athenians suffered heavy losses, and Egypt was reintegrated into the empire's structure. During the same period, the Persian administration adjusted its foreign policy toward Greece. The Delian League, led by Athens, had expanded its influence across the Aegean and Asia Minor. Persian strategy shifted from confrontation to indirect management through diplomacy and financial influence. The Peace of Callias, traditionally dated around 449 BC, is believed to have formalized a truce between Persia and Athens, though historical certainty about the treaty remains debated. According to Greek sources, the agreement stipulated that Persian forces would not sail west of certain Aegean limits, and Athens would refrain from interfering in Persian territories in Asia. Domestically, Artaxerxes focused on maintaining stability and economic balance. Inscriptions and administrative records indicate continued activity at Susa and Persepolis. Royal decrees issued during his reign reference temple restorations and standardization of regional tax assessments. The imperial postal system and the royal road network were maintained, ensuring consistent communication between the central court and the satrapies. In the western provinces, the satraps of Lydia, Phrygia, and Hellespontine Phrygia managed relations with Greek cities and maintained garrisons at key coastal sites. The satraps held considerable authority, often negotiating independently with foreign states. This semi-autonomy reflected the empire's reliance on local administration over direct military presence. Artaxerxes' reign also holds importance in biblical and Jewish history. According to Hebrew and Aramaic sources, it was under his rule that Ezra and Nehemiah returned to Jerusalem to oversee the restoration of Jewish religious and civic life after the Babylonian exile. These events, corroborated by the Elephantine papyri from Egypt, demonstrate the Persian policy of religious tolerance and pragmatic governance. The empire's approach allowed local communities to maintain self-administration as long as they recognized Persian sovereignty and paid tribute. Artaxerxes ruled for over 4 decades, a period that provided continuity after the turbulence of Xerxes' final years. His long reign allowed administrative systems to mature. He died in 424 BC and was succeeded by his son Xerxes II, whose rule lasted only about 45 days before he was assassinated by his half-brother Sogdianus. The internal instability following Artaxerxes' death was brief. Another half-brother, Achus, seized power with military backing, taking the throne as Darius II Nothus. Darius II inherited a stable yet increasingly decentralized empire. His rule, for 123 to 404 BC, reflected the persistence of the Achaemenid system, but also its growing reliance on powerful satraps and military leaders. Revolts occurred in several provinces, though none seriously threatened the empire's integrity. The administrative capital remained at Susa, with Persepolis continuing to serve ceremonial functions. During Darius II's reign, the empire re-entered Greek affairs through calculated intervention in the Peloponnesian War for 131 to 404 BC. Initially neutral, Persia saw opportunity in the conflict between Athens and Sparta. Around 413 BC, the Persian satrap Tissaphernes in Asia Minor began supporting Sparta to weaken Athenian influence over the Ionian coast. Funding from Persian treasuries enabled Sparta to build a navy capable of challenging Athenian dominance. In return, Sparta recognized Persian control over the Greek cities of Asia Minor. This policy shifted the balance of power in Greece. Persian gold financed Spartan military operations, leading to Athens' eventual defeat in 404 BC. The strategy reflected Persian diplomatic pragmatism, using resources and alliances to maintain regional balance without direct military engagement. While Persian armies did not invade Greece again, the empire's influence over Greek politics remained strong throughout the late 5th century BC. Internally, Darius II's administration faced growing challenges in maintaining uniform governance. Corruption among satraps and officials became a recurring issue. The distance between central authority and provincial power centers widened, especially in Western territories such as Lydia and Phrygia. However, the Persian economy remained robust, supported by agriculture, trade, and tribute. Babylon and Susa continued to serve as production and administrative hubs, with archival evidence confirming the ongoing use of Aramaic as the empire's lingua franca. Religion and cultural policy under Darius II followed established precedents. Inscriptions continued to invoke Ahura Mazda, affirming royal legitimacy, but no attempt was made to impose a single faith. Local temples in Egypt, Babylon, and Anatolia continued to function under Persian supervision. The administrative flexibility that had characterized earlier Achaemenid rule persisted, ensuring cohesion across culturally diverse provinces. Toward the end of Darius II's reign, the empire faced minor rebellions and border unrest. The satrap Pisithens of Lydia revolted around 420 BC, reportedly bribing Greek mercenaries to support him. The rebellion was suppressed, and Pisithens was executed. Such incidents, while localized, revealed the emerging pattern of semi-autonomous satraps challenging central power. Darius II's later years were marked by succession planning and court rivalry. His wife, Persides, played a significant role in court politics, promoting her son Cyrus the Younger to prominent military and administrative positions. Cyrus was appointed satrap of Lydia and commander of all forces in Western Asia Minor. This arrangement laid the groundwork for the events that would follow after Darius's death. Darius II died in 404 BC, leaving the empire to his elder son Artaxerxes II Neman. His death coincided with the end of the Peloponnesian War and a major shift in Greek-Persian relations. Despite internal tensions, the Achaemenid Empire under Artaxerxes I and Darius II maintained its borders, wealth, and influence across 3 continents. The administrative systems created under Darius I continued to operate, though increasingly dependent on the loyalty and competence of regional satraps. In 404 BC, after the death of Darius II, the Persian throne passed to his eldest son Artaxerxes II Neman. His accession followed a brief and contested succession period. Almost immediately, his younger brother Cyrus the Younger, who had been stationed as satrap in Lydia and commander of Western forces, challenged the succession. The empire, though still powerful, entered a new phase marked by internal strife and growing provincial autonomy. Artaxerxes II was crowned at Pasargadae, the ceremonial heart of Achaemenid kingship. Traditional rites honoring Ahura Mazda and invoking the lineage from Cyrus the Great and Darius I affirmed his legitimacy. However, Cyrus the Younger had built a strong power base in Asia Minor during his father's reign. Supported by his mother, Persides, and several Western satraps, Cyrus aimed to seize the throne. His preparations were conducted under the pretense of a campaign against rebellious tribes in Pisidia, but in reality, he gathered troops, including around 10,000 Greek mercenaries. The confrontation between the two brothers culminated in 401 BC at the Battle of Cunaxa, north of Babylon. Cyrus's army consisted of Persian cavalry, Asiatic infantry, and the disciplined Greek hoplites led by Clearchus of Sparta. Despite initial success on the battlefield, Cyrus was killed during direct combat with Artaxerxes' forces. His death ended the rebellion, but the aftermath exposed weaknesses in the empire's administrative cohesion. The surviving Greek mercenaries, known as the 10,000, were stranded deep within Persian territory. Their retreat, chronicled later by Xenophon in the Anabasis, provided a rare first-hand account of the empire's geography, satrapal divisions, and local governance. The event also revealed to the Greeks that Persia's internal unity was maintained more by local loyalties and royal prestige than by constant military control. Following Cyrus's defeat, Artaxerxes II faced the challenge of consolidating power and suppressing dissent across the western provinces. Satraps who had supported Cyrus were either executed or replaced. Tissaphernes, loyal to the king, regained control over the western provinces, but was later executed in 395 BC on orders from the royal court after political rivalries emerged. The recurring tension between the central court and regional satraps defined much of Artaxerxes' reign. Artaxerxes II ruled for more than 40 years, the longest reign in Achaemenid history. His administration maintained the satrapal structure but struggled to contain frequent local revolts. Between 400 BC and 370 BC, the empire witnessed several uprisings collectively known as the Great Satraps' Revolt. Satraps in Asia Minor, such as Datames of Cappadocia, Ariobarzanes of Phrygia, and Orontes of Armenia, sought greater independence, often allying with Greek city-states or Egypt. Persian central authority endured, but coordination between satrapies weakened. Artaxerxes managed these revolts through alternating strategies of negotiation, bribery, and limited military campaigns. Rather than relying solely on royal armies, he exploited rivalries between satraps to prevent unified resistance. The empire's administrative apparatus, while strained, continued to function through this decentralized flexibility. Externally, Persia reasserted its diplomatic and economic influence in Greek affairs. During the Corinthian War, 395 to 387 BC, Persia initially supported the Greek coalition of Athens, Thebes, Corinth, and Argos against Sparta. However, Persian priorities shifted when Spartan dominance began threatening Persian interests in Asia Minor. Artaxerxes intervened diplomatically, sponsoring the Peace of Antalcidas, also called the King's Peace, in 387 BC. The treaty, imposed through Persian authority, declared that all Greek cities in Asia Minor and Cyprus would belong to Persia, while other Greek cities were to remain autonomous. This agreement represented a strategic victory for Artaxerxes II. Without deploying large armies, Persia restored control over the Ionian coast and reaffirmed its sovereignty in Western Asia. The peace demonstrated the continuing importance of Persia in Mediterranean politics and its ability to manipulate rival states through diplomacy and funding. Despite external stability, Egypt remained outside Persian control for much of Artaxerxes II's reign. Egypt had successfully revolted during the later years of Darius II, and repeated attempts to reconquer it failed. A major campaign around 373 BC, led by Pharnabazus II and the Athenian general Iphicrates, achieved temporary gains but ultimately collapsed due to poor coordination and logistical difficulties. Egyptian independence persisted until the next reign. Persia's eastern territories, Bactria, Sogdia, and Arachosia, remained relatively stable. Governors in these regions maintained local defense networks and trade routes connecting to India and Central Asia. The empire's economy during this era relied on continued agricultural production, tribute from satrapies, and long-distance trade in luxury goods such as textiles, spices, and metals. Persian coinage, standardized since Darius I's reforms, remained in use across the empire, facilitating both taxation and commerce. Culturally, Artaxerxes II oversaw significant building activity. Records and archaeological evidence indicate that construction continued at Susa and Ecbatana, and there were restorations at Persepolis. Inscriptions issued in Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian reaffirmed devotion to Ahura Mazda and the divine sanction of kingship. At the same time, local religious traditions flourished across the empire. Babylonian temples, Egyptian shrines, and Anatolian sanctuaries all operated under Persian oversight, reflecting a continuation of administrative tolerance toward regional faiths. Artaxerxes II's rule was marked by the influence of the royal harem and court intrigues. His mother, Persides, retained power early in his reign, but later lost favor after conflicts involving the executions of royal family members. The king had numerous wives and children, contributing to later succession disputes. Court politics are often intertwined with provincial governance, as appointments to satrapies and military commands were influenced by family connections and alliances within the nobility. By the late 4th century BC, the empire remained the largest political entity in the known world, but its cohesion depended increasingly on negotiation and compromise rather than direct royal command. The administrative efficiency developed under earlier rulers persisted, yet corruption and local ambitions eroded the unity that had characterized the early Achaemenid state. Artaxerxes II's later years were occupied with managing court rivalries and ensuring the succession. His son Darius, Artaxerxes III, was appointed heir. When Artaxerxes II died in 358 BC, the empire's borders remained intact, stretching from the Indus Valley to the Aegean Sea and from the Caucasus to the Persian Gulf. However, the prolonged internal fragmentation and the growing independence of satraps had set the stage for the structural weaknesses that his successor would inherit. When Artaxerxes II died in 358 BC, his son Artaxerxes III Achus ascended the throne amid instability and court intrigue. Having previously served as satrap of Armenia and commander in military campaigns, Achus understood the necessity of reasserting direct royal control over the provinces. His early reign was defined by internal purges and the systematic restoration of central authority across the empire. Artaxerxes III began his rule by eliminating potential rivals. Within the royal family, many princes and nobles were executed to prevent rebellion. The empire's satraps, many of whom had grown semi-independent under his father, were ordered to dismiss their mercenaries and submit to central oversight. Those who refused were suppressed through military intervention. This marked a deliberate reversal of the lenient policies of Artaxerxes II. The reforms were intended to restore the disciplined administration that had characterized the empire under Darius I. In 356 BC, Artaxerxes III initiated a major campaign to reconquer Egypt, which had been independent since the late reign of Darius II. The first expedition failed due to disunity among the commanders and the strength of Egypt's defensive alliances with Greek mercenaries. The Persian army, composed of contingents from across the empire, including troops from Phoenicia, Cilicia, and the Iranian plateau, was repelled near the Nile Delta. Following the failure, Artaxerxes imposed strict punishments on disloyal satraps and reorganized the military chain of command. Between 355 and 350 BC, widespread revolts broke out in Phoenicia, Cyprus, and Asia Minor. These uprisings were interconnected, reflecting both local grievances and the weakening of Persian influence among maritime powers. In Phoenicia, the city of Sidon, under King Tenes, revolted with Egyptian and Greek support. Artaxerxes III personally led the campaign to suppress the rebellion. According to later Greek sources such as Diodorus Siculus, the king advanced with a massive army estimated at over 300,000 men, though this figure is likely exaggerated. The Phoenician cities were overwhelmed, and Sidon was destroyed around 345 BC after Tenes betrayed it to the Persians in exchange for his own life, which was not spared. The destruction of Sidon served as a warning to other provinces, restoring the fear of royal authority. After re-establishing control in the western provinces, Artaxerxes III turned again toward Egypt. In 343 BC, he launched a second campaign that achieved complete success. This time, the invasion was planned with logistical precision. The Persian army advanced in 3 divisions through the eastern Nile Delta, while naval forces secured supply lines along the coast. The Egyptian pharaoh Nectanebo II retreated south, but was eventually forced to flee to Nubia. Egypt was reincorporated into the empire as a satrapy, marking the last major expansion of Achaemenid territory. Artaxerxes appointed Pharnabates as satrap, re-established Persian garrisons in Memphis and Pelusium, and reinstated taxation systems modeled after those of Darius I. Following the reconquest, Persia entered a brief period of renewed stability. The empire's full territorial extent was once again secured, stretching from the Indus Valley in the east to the Mediterranean in the west. Artaxerxes III reasserted centralized governance through administrative reforms and the promotion of loyal officials. The collection of tribute resumed at consistent rates, and royal inspectors were dispatched throughout the provinces to monitor compliance. The satrapal system, though still decentralized, was under tighter supervision than it had been for almost a century. The king's policies also included religious and architectural undertakings. He commissioned restorations at Persepolis, Susa, and Ecbatana, continuing the Achaemenid tradition of monumental construction. Inscriptions from this period, written in Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian, follow the established formula invoking Ahura Mazda as the divine protector of kingship. These texts reinforce the continuity of Achaemenid ideology despite the administrative and military turbulence of the period. However, internal tension persisted within the royal court. The eunuch Bagoas, a powerful court official, gained influence as chief minister. Bagoas managed court affairs and often mediated between the king and satraps, controlling access to royal audiences. Although his authority stabilized the court, it also fostered resentment among the nobility. Greek sources later attributed much of the intrigue during this period to Bagoa's South manipulation of court politics, though such accounts must be viewed critically, given their external perspective. The Greek world, meanwhile, was undergoing rapid transformation. During the reign of Artaxerxes III, Philip II of Macedon rose to prominence in northern Greece. Persia's attention to internal consolidation left Greek affairs largely unchecked. The once fragmented Greek city-states were gradually being brought under Macedonian hegemony, a development that would soon pose a direct threat to Persia. Artaxerxes III maintained limited diplomatic contact with Greek powers, occasionally funding anti-Macedonian coalitions, but these efforts lacked coordination. In 340 BC, the Persians intervened in Asia Minor to stabilize the western frontier. The Aegean coast remained a crucial region for trade and naval activity. Local satraps were tasked with maintaining alliances with Greek cities loyal to Persia, such as Rhodes and some Ionian centers. Persian control over the Aegean was weaker than in earlier centuries, but sufficient to secure tribute and access to ports. Artaxerxes III's later reign was characterized by a restoration of the traditional Achaemenid administrative order. He reaffirmed the use of the royal road system for rapid communication and enforced tax collection through standardized measures. The empire's economy was still largely agrarian, but international trade through the Persian Gulf and along the Mediterranean routes continued to bring revenue from luxury goods, spices, and raw materials. The military reforms under Artaxerxes III also aimed to strengthen the empire's defenses. Garrisons were reinforced in strategic locations such as Babylon, Sardis, and Memphis. The Persian army, composed of both Iranian and subject troops, maintained a permanent core force of cavalry and infantry. The reorganization ensured that the central government could mobilize quickly against future revolts. In 338 BC, Artaxerxes III died suddenly in Susa. Greek and later Roman writers claimed that he was poisoned by Bagoas, possibly as part of a succession plot, though direct evidence for this is lacking. His son Arses, known as Artaxerxes IV, succeeded him but reigned only briefly. Bagoas continued to dominate court politics, effectively controlling the transition of power. By the time of Artaxerxes III's death, the Persian Empire was once again unified and territorially whole, but its administrative system was increasingly dependent on individual competence rather than institutional strength. The empire had recovered from decades of decentralization, yet it faced new geopolitical realities. The rise of Macedon under Philip II, and soon his son Alexander, was shifting the balance of power in the ancient world. Persia's renewed unity, achieved through coercion and reform, would soon be tested by forces beyond its borders. In 336 BC, following the brief and unstable rule of Artaxerxes IV, the throne of the Achaemenid Empire passed to Darius III Codomanus. He was a distant relative of the royal family, formerly a satrap and military commander under Artaxerxes III. His accession was orchestrated by the court official Bagoas, who had poisoned both Artaxerxes III and IV in a bid to control imperial authority. Shortly after assuming power, Darius had Bagoas executed, removing a dangerous manipulator but inheriting an empire weakened by years of intrigue, administrative strain, and external threats. The Persian Empire at the start of Darius' reign still extended from the Indus River to the Aegean Sea, but its unity was fragile. The satrapal system, though restored by Artaxerxes III, depended heavily on personal loyalty. Provincial governors controlled large local armies and treasuries, often acting semi-independently. The empire's frontiers were under increasing pressure. Scythian tribes in Central Asia, restive Greek cities in Asia Minor, and a new, organized power rising in the Balkans, Macedon under Philip II and his son Alexander. In 334 BC, 2 years after Darius's coronation, Alexander of Macedon launched his invasion of Asia. Philip II had already prepared the groundwork, uniting Greece under the Corinthian League and presenting the campaign as retribution for Persia's earlier invasions. Alexander crossed the Hellespont in the spring of 334 BC with an army of about 40,000 men, composed of Macedonian infantry, Greek allies, and cavalry units. His forces landed at Abydos and advanced into Asia Minor. The first major clash occurred at the Battle of the Granicus River, near modern-day Baiga in northwestern Turkey. The Persian forces were commanded by local satraps, including Arcides of Hellespontine Phrygia and Spithridates of Lydia. Their army consisted primarily of cavalry supported by Greek mercenaries. The Persians attempted to block Alexander's crossing of the river, but the Macedonian phalanx, advancing in formation, broke their lines. The Persian commanders were either killed or fled. The victory at Granicus opened the road to western Anatolia and encouraged the Ionian Greek cities to revolt against Persian rule. Darius did not personally command at Granicus, viewing the conflict as a local disturbance. His initial strategy was to allow regional satraps to contain the Macedonian advance. However, the speed of Alexander's campaign forced a reassessment. Within a year, the Macedonian army occupied Sardis, the old Lydian capital, and continued along the Aegean coast, liberating Greek cities such as Ephesus, Miletus, and Halicarnassus. By 333 BC, most of Western Asia Minor had fallen under Macedonian control. Realizing the scale of the threat, Darius mobilized the full resources of the empire. He gathered troops from the eastern provinces, Bactria, Sogdiana, and India, alongside contingents from Mesopotamia, Phoenicia, Egypt, and Syria. The army, according to Greek accounts, numbered several 100,000, though modern estimates suggest a smaller but still formidable force. Darius advanced northward into Cilicia, intending to cut Alexander off from his supply lines. The two armies met near the town of Issus in November 333 BC. The Battle of Issus was a decisive engagement. Darius positioned his army in a narrow plain between the mountains and the sea, which limited the use of his numerical advantage. The Persian left and right wings consisted of cavalry and light infantry, while Greek mercenaries formed the center. Darius commanded from a chariot behind the main line. Alexander led the Macedonian right flank in a direct assault against the Persian center. The Persian lines collapsed after Alexander's charge penetrated the defensive formation near Darius's chariot. Darius fled the battlefield, leaving behind his mother, wife, and children, who were captured but treated with respect. The loss at Issus marked a major psychological and strategic blow. After Issus, Alexander moved south to secure the eastern Mediterranean. Between 332 and 331 BC, he subdued Phoenicia, Syria, and Egypt, capturing major strongholds such as Tyre and Gaza. The siege of Tyre, lasting 7 months, eliminated Persia's most important naval base in the region. Egypt surrendered without resistance, and Alexander was crowned pharaoh in Memphis. The Persian naval forces, largely dependent on Phoenician and Cypriot ships, lost cohesion. Control of the Mediterranean coastline passed to Macedon, isolating the Persian heartland. During this time, Darius regrouped in Babylon and Susa, raising another army from the empire's core regions. He sought to use the vast resources of the East to mount a final defense. Administrative records from Babylon show intensive provisioning for troops and horses during this period. Darius also sent diplomatic envoys to Alexander, offering peace terms that included the cession of territories west of the Euphrates. Alexander rejected these proposals, insisting on full surrender. In 331 BC, Darius assembled his forces near Gaugamela, close to modern Mosul in northern Iraq. The battlefield was chosen deliberately, broad and flat, ideal for cavalry and chariots. Darius's army included elite cavalry units, scythe chariots, and contingents from every corner of the empire, including Indian war elephants. Alexander's army, though smaller, was disciplined and cohesive, relying on the phalanx and coordinated cavalry tactics. The Battle of Gaugamela, fought in October 331 BC, decided the fate of the Achaemenid Empire. Darius positioned himself at the center once again, surrounded by his royal guard. The Persians launched an initial attack using chariots, but the Macedonian infantry opened gaps in their lines to let them pass harmlessly. Alexander, leading the right flank, identified a weakness between the Persian center and left and executed a concentrated assault. The Macedonian wedge formation broke through, driving directly toward Darius. As at Issus, Darius fled the field when his chariot became entangled in retreating troops. The Persian army disintegrated, and the remaining forces scattered eastward. After Gaugamela, Alexander advanced into Babylon, which surrendered without resistance. He entered Susa, where he seized immense treasures accumulated over 2 centuries of Persian rule. The ancient capital Persepolis was occupied in early 330 BC. Classical sources report that parts of Persepolis, including the royal palace complex, were burned, whether intentionally as retribution for the destruction of Athens or as an accident remains debated. The fires symbolized the end of Persian sovereignty over their own empire. Darius fled north into Media, attempting to regroup with loyal satraps such as Bessus of Bactria. However, the cohesion of the empire had collapsed. Many satraps surrendered to Alexander or declared independence. Bessus, seeking to preserve eastern authority, betrayed Darius, arresting him near Ecbatana. When Alexander's pursuit closed in, Darius was mortally wounded, either by his captors or in the ensuing chaos, around July 330 BC. His body was later found by Macedonian soldiers, and Alexander ordered it buried with royal honors at Persepolis in recognition of his rank as the last Achaemenid king. With Darius III's death, the Achaemenid dynasty, founded by Cyrus the Great 2 centuries earlier, came to an end. The empire, once the largest in the world, passed under Macedonian control. Alexander adopted Persian administrative practices, maintaining the satrapal system and employing many Persian officials to govern the former provinces. The cities of Babylon, Susa, and Persepolis transitioned into centers of Macedonian administration, marking the absorption of the Persian imperial framework into Alexander's new dominion. After the death of Darius III in 330 BC, the political structure of the Achaemenid Empire disintegrated, but its administrative systems did not vanish. Alexander of Macedon inherited not a destroyed realm, but a functioning imperial framework. Many Persian satraps, treasurers, and military officers quickly submitted to him, recognizing that cooperation offered continuity and security. In turn, Alexander chose not to dismantle the Persian administrative model. Instead, he absorbed it, blending Macedonian military dominance with the existing Persian bureaucracy. The immediate aftermath of Darius' death was marked by Alexander's campaign to secure the eastern provinces. The satrap Bessus, who had betrayed Darius, declared himself Artaxerxes V, attempting to claim legitimacy as the next king of Persia. He retreated eastward into Bactria and Sogdiana, rallying local governors and seeking to maintain Achaemenid sovereignty in the eastern territories. Alexander pursued him across the Iranian plateau, following the traditional route of the royal road through Ecbatana, Regi, and Hyrcania. By late 330 BC, Alexander had established control over the Persian heartlands, including Persepolis, Pasargadae, and Susa. He appointed Macedonian governors to major centers while retaining experienced Persian officials in administrative posts. In Babylon and Susa, the local systems of taxation, record-keeping, and satrapal hierarchy continued largely unchanged. The treasuries seized in these cities were redistributed but not destroyed. The infrastructure that had sustained the empire, the royal road, postal couriers, and storage depots, remained operational under new command. In 329 BC, Alexander crossed into Bactria to suppress Bessus's resistance. The Persian noble Spitamines initially supported Bessus but later turned against him, capturing and delivering him to Alexander's forces. Bessus was executed for treason, symbolizing the definitive end of the Achaemenid royal line. Even after his death, the eastern satrapies remained unstable. Revolts erupted among the local aristocracy and Central Asian tribes accustomed to relative autonomy under Persian rule. Alexander responded by founding military colonies and garrison towns, such as Alexandria Esgate, the furthest Alexandria, near the Jaxartes River, to secure the frontier. Despite these military campaigns, Alexander's governance depended heavily on the Persian administrative tradition. He maintained the satrapal system, often pairing a Macedonian military commander with a Persian civil governor to prevent the concentration of power. The use of local scribes, tax assessors, and inspectors continued. Persian chancery languages, Aramaic, Elamite, and Old Persian, remained in bureaucratic use, ensuring continuity in documentation. The empire's financial structure also survived. Silver and gold darics still circulated, and tribute from subject regions continued to flow into centralized treasuries. In adopting Persian systems, Alexander also absorbed aspects of Persian court culture. He took up residence in Persepolis and Susa, dressed in Persian royal garments during ceremonies, and maintained traditional court rituals. The introduction of proskynesis, the act of bowing or prostration before the monarch, was drawn directly from Achaemenid custom. Many Macedonians resented this adoption, but Alexander saw it as a practical means of ruling a vast, multicultural empire whose cohesion had long depended on ceremonial hierarchy. By 327 BC, Alexander's eastern campaigns were complete, and his empire now extended beyond the former Persian frontiers into India. The administrative stability of his rule rested almost entirely on Persian precedent. The satrapies of Bactria, Arachosia, Parthia, and Sogdiana functioned with the same logistical patterns established under Darius I 2 centuries earlier. The road systems, depots, and relay stations allowed supplies and orders to move efficiently from Babylon to the Indus Valley, mirroring the imperial communication network that had once connected Susa to Sardis. Persian religious and cultural practices also persisted. The temples of Ahura Mazda and other local deities remained active under Alexander's oversight. At Pasargadae, the tomb of Cyrus the Great was preserved and honored. According to later accounts, when Alexander visited the site, he ordered repairs to the structure and placed guards around it. This act reflected not sentiment, but political understanding. Cyrus was still revered by Persians as the legitimate founder of the empire, and showing respect for his memory reinforced Alexander's claim as successor to Persian kingship. In the administrative centers of the empire, the machinery of record-keeping continued to function. At Babylon, astronomical diaries and cuneiform tablets document the transition from Persian to Macedonian rule without interruption. The scribes who had once recorded orders from Darius now wrote in the name of Alexander. The same is true in Egypt, where Aramaic papyri from the period indicate that Persian civil structures were maintained under new Greek supervision. Economically, Alexander's reign saw the continued integration of the Persian imperial economy into a wider Mediterranean and Central Asian network. The silver reserves of Persepolis, Susa, and Babylon were used to finance new cities and pay troops, while the Persian coinage system formed the foundation for the later Hellenistic drachma standard. Agricultural administration remained unchanged, with satraps responsible for collecting grain, livestock, and tribute in kind. The irrigation systems established under earlier Achaemenid rulers, especially in Mesopotamia and Iran, remained productive. In 325 BC, during the return from India, Alexander's armies passed through the Persian Gulf and the province of Gidroja. The logistical infrastructure, rest stations, water depots, and storage sites, originally developed by Persian administrators, was critical in sustaining his march through the harsh terrain. Many of these installations were inherited directly from the imperial road system built under Darius I. The collapse of Persian political sovereignty did not erase its bureaucratic and cultural influence. The continuity was evident in the hybrid administration that emerged after Alexander died in 323 BC. The empire fragmented among his generals, forming the Hellenistic kingdoms, but the underlying framework of Persian governance persisted. The Seleucid Empire, which controlled much of the former Persian territory, retained the satrapal divisions, the use of Aramaic for administration, and the economic networks centered on Susa and Babylon. Persian elites adapted to the new order. Many former satraps and nobles were incorporated into Macedonian or Seleucid administration, maintaining local authority while acknowledging new overlords. In regions like Bactria and Parthia, Persian families continued to dominate landholding and regional politics, ensuring that Achaemenid traditions survived long after the fall of the dynasty. The language, art, and bureaucratic habits of the Achaemenid period became part of the political vocabulary of later empires across Asia. By the end of the 4th century BC, the transformation from Achaemenid to Macedonian rule was complete, but the administrative and cultural continuity of Persia remained visible. The institutions developed under Darius I and refined under his successors endured under Alexander and his successors, bridging the transition from Persian imperial rule to Hellenistic governance. The empire's physical and bureaucratic infrastructure, roads, satrapies, treasuries, and archives, continued to shape the political geography of the ancient Near East for generations. After Alexander's death in 323 BC, his generals, known as the Diadochi, divided his territories, including the former Achaemenid domains. Although the Achaemenid dynasty had ended, its administrative and cultural systems shaped the empires that followed. The empire's political and bureaucratic model became the foundation of Hellenistic governance in Asia, most notably under the Seleucid Empire. The Seleucids inherited the core territories of the old Achaemenid Empire, Mesopotamia, Iran, Syria, and parts of Anatolia. They maintained the satrapal system, dividing the realm into provinces governed by officials who combined military and civil authority. The continuity of this system demonstrated its practicality for ruling vast and ethnically diverse lands. The Seleucids adopted many Persian practices, including the use of royal roads, postal couriers, and fixed tribute systems. Aramaic, the administrative language of the Achaemenid Empire, remained in widespread bureaucratic use alongside Greek. In Babylon, Seleucid records reveal the persistence of Persian administrative forms. Cuneiform tablets from this period continue to record agricultural yields, temple taxes, and local decrees in the same format used under Darius I. Many scribes who had served under Persian rule, or their descendants, remained employed in the new administration. The Seleucids also relied on Persian noble families to manage estates and maintain order in rural regions, particularly in Media, Persis, and Bactria. Persian culture retained influence within the new political order. The Seleucid kings, while presenting themselves as Hellenic monarchs, adopted aspects of Persian court ceremony. The concept of divine kingship, formalized under the Achaemenids, continued in the royal ideology of the Hellenistic world. The practice of addressing the king as a semi-divine figure, maintaining elaborate court rituals, and enforcing hierarchical etiquette all originated from Persian precedent. In the eastern provinces, particularly Bactria and Parthia, local Persian and Iranian elites retained significant autonomy. Over time, these regions distanced themselves from Seleucid authority. By the mid-3rd century BC, the Greco-Bactrian kingdom and the Parthian state emerged as independent powers. Both drew heavily from Achaemenid traditions. The Parthians, under the Arsacid dynasty, explicitly styled themselves as successors to the Achaemenids, adopting Persian titles and restoring elements of the satrapal administration. They reinstated the royal ideology of divine kingship and presented themselves as defenders of Iranian culture against foreign, Greek, influence. The Parthian Empire, 247 BC, AD 224, revived much of the Achaemenid territorial structure. Its rulers governed through semi-independent regional governors who managed local taxation, law, and military defense, echoing the autonomy granted to Achaemenid satraps. The Parthian court ceremonies, coinage, and royal titles deliberately evoked the memory of Cyrus and Darius. Persian remained the language of prestige, and Zoroastrian traditions were reasserted as central to Iranian identity. When the Sasanian Empire replaced the Parthians in the 3rd century AD, the continuity became even more explicit. The Sasanians portrayed themselves as direct heirs to the Achaemenids, referring to their realm as the Empire of the Iranians, a title rooted in Achaemenid ideology. They re-established Persepolis as a site of royal memory, and revived administrative structures reminiscent of Darius' IS reforms. The Sasanian central bureaucracy, tax system, and infrastructure echoed the efficient, hierarchical model first developed under the early Achaemenid kings. Architectural and artistic continuity also reflected the endurance of Achaemenid influence. Columns, reliefs, and royal iconography found at Sasanian capitals such as Ctesiphon and Firuzabad retain the motifs of Persepolis, royal processions, winged symbols, and depictions of the king before divine emblems. Even the coinage of later Persian empires continued the Achaemenid tradition of presenting the ruler in profile, wearing a distinctive headdress or crown, a visual symbol of legitimate kingship. Beyond Persia, the legacy of the Achaemenid administrative system shaped later empires across Eurasia. The concept of a centralized empire divided into provinces, governed by appointed officials, and linked by efficient communication routes became a standard model for imperial governance. The Roman Empire, particularly under Augustus, mirrored many of these features. Rome adopted the idea of imperial roads, a postal system for official correspondence, and provincial governors responsible for taxation and order, principles established under the Achaemenids more than 5 centuries earlier. In the Near East and Central Asia, the Persian influence persisted through language, governance, and cultural memory. Aramaic, introduced as an imperial lingua franca by the Achaemenids, evolved into various regional dialects, influencing later Semitic languages. Persian administrative techniques informed the bureaucratic traditions of successive Islamic caliphates, particularly the Abbasid administration centered in Baghdad, which occupied the same region as Achaemenid Babylon. Persian scribes and officials continued to dominate state bureaucracy in Islamic Iran, transmitting the Achaemenid legacy into medieval governance. The Persian imperial model also shaped political theory. The idea of a ruler as the protector of multiple peoples under one law, accountable to divine authority, originated with the Achaemenid conception of kingship. Inscriptions such as those at Behistun introduced a model of imperial legitimacy grounded in justice, divine sanction, and administrative order rather than ethnic supremacy. Later empires, including the Byzantine, Ottoman, and Mughal, adopted similar notions of universal rulership. Economically, the infrastructure developed under Achaemenid rule remained central to regional trade for centuries. The Royal Road, stretching from Sardis to Susa, continued as a primary commercial artery under the Seleucids, Parthians, and Romans. The caravan routes established through Persia connected the Mediterranean world with Central Asia and India, forming the early foundation of the Silk Road network. Persian innovations in standardized coinage, weight systems, and taxation became enduring features of imperial economies across Asia. Culturally, Achaemenid policies of tolerance and integration set precedents for future governance. Their recognition of local customs, languages, and religions influenced later rulers who governed multicultural states. The empire's archives, discovered at Persepolis, document administrative correspondence in multiple languages, illustrating how centralized power coexisted with local autonomy. This flexible but organized structure proved sustainable and was imitated by many later empires seeking stability across vast territories. Archaeological discoveries further confirm the depth of Achaemenid influence. Excavations at Persepolis, Susa, and Pasargadae reveal advanced urban planning, drainage systems, and monumental architecture that combined Mesopotamian, Egyptian, and Anatolian techniques. The empire's ability to integrate such diverse elements into a cohesive political identity reflected a sophistication that outlasted its political existence. Even after its fall, Persian craftsmanship, engineering, and art continued to influence Greek, Hellenistic, and Roman architecture. In intellectual history, the Achaemenid Empire occupies a transitional place between the ancient Near Eastern monarchies and the classical world. It connected the civilizations of Mesopotamia, Egypt, Greece, and India into a single political and economic system for the first time. This integration facilitated the spread of ideas, technologies, and administrative knowledge that shaped the ancient world's evolution. The empire's communication networks allowed for exchanges between scholars, traders, and diplomats across thousands of kilometers, creating a foundation for the later cosmopolitanism of the Hellenistic era. The memory of the Achaemenids remained embedded in Persian identity throughout antiquity and beyond. Classical authors such as Herodotus, Xenophon, and Arrian recorded their achievements, often with bias, but preserving key details of their administration and conquests. In later centuries, Persian historians and poets reinterpreted the Achaemenids as archetypes of just and lawful kingship. Works like Ferdowsi's Shahnameh, composed over a millennium later, drew upon collective memories of the early Persian kings to define Iran's national and moral heritage. The continuity of Persian statecraft from Cyrus the Great through the Sasanians and into the Islamic period illustrates the enduring strength of the Achaemenid model. Its combination of administrative rationality, cultural tolerance, and infrastructural sophistication provided a template that successive empires, both within and beyond Iran, found difficult to improve upon. Even after foreign conquest, Persian institutions and ideals remained resilient, embedding themselves within every new regime that ruled the region. The Achaemenid Empire, though politically extinguished in 330 BC, continued as a structural and ideological legacy shaping the ancient and medieval world. Its principles of governance, communication, and cultural pluralism endured for over 2 millennia, marking it as one of the most influential imperial systems in human history. The Achaemenid Empire functioned not only as a vast political structure, but as a complex society supported by an organized administrative framework, a shared cultural identity, and efficient systems of communication and control. The success of Persian rule depended less on military conquest and more on how its rulers managed an empire stretching from the Indus Valley to the Aegean Sea, encompassing a wide range of languages, religions, and customs. At the core of this system was the idea of imperial centralization balanced with local autonomy. The empire was divided into approximately 20 satrapies, or provinces, each governed by a satrap appointed by the great king. The satraps acted as both military and civil administrators, responsible for tax collection, legal order, and defense. Their positions were often filled by Persian nobles or loyal members of the royal family, but they employed local officials to manage regional affairs. Darius II's reorganization around 522 BC fixed clear boundaries for these satrapies and standardized their tribute obligations. Records from Persepolis show that each province paid taxes in silver or in kind, grain, livestock, or precious goods, depending on local resources. The satrapal system was supported by a network of royal inspectors, known as the king's eyes and ears. These officials reported directly to the king, bypassing local authorities to prevent corruption and rebellion. They conducted periodic reviews of provincial administration and ensured that taxes and supplies reached the imperial treasury without interference. This created an early model of bureaucratic oversight rarely matched in the ancient world. Central administration operated from Persepolis, Susa, and Ecbatana, with each serving a specific seasonal or ceremonial role. Susa often functioned as the primary seat of government, particularly under Darius and Xerxes, because of its strategic location between Mesopotamia and Persia proper. Persepolis, founded by Darius, served as the ceremonial capital where tribute from across the empire was presented during the New Year festival, Nowruz. Administrative tablets discovered at Persepolis, the so-called fortification tablets, contained detailed accounts of rations, worker payments, and travel authorizations. These records reveal an empire governed through a sophisticated system of written documentation, seals, and receipts. The official languages of the empire reflected its diversity. Old Persian, Elamite, Akkadian, and Aramaic were used in various contexts. Old Persian appeared on royal inscriptions and monuments, while Elamite dominated administrative tablets in Persia itself. Aramaic, standardized by Darius, became the lingua franca of imperial communication. Its widespread use in documents, decrees, and letters made it possible for local officials across thousands of kilometers to correspond effectively. The use of multiple languages demonstrates how the Persian rule adapted to existing administrative traditions rather than erasing them. Law under the Achaemenids drew from both Persian customs and local legal traditions. Unlike later empires that imposed uniform codes, the Persians allowed subject peoples to retain their own legal systems. In Babylon, temple archives continued to record property contracts and marriage agreements using Mesopotamian formulas. In Egypt, local courts operated alongside Persian officials. This policy reduced resistance by maintaining continuity with long-established institutions while ensuring ultimate authority rested with the king. The Persian army formed the empire's foundation of stability. Darius I organized a professional standing army supported by a system of satrapal levies. Core units, such as the Immortals, a regiment of 10,000 elite soldiers, provided constant readiness and acted as the king's personal guard. Troops were drawn from across the empire, each contributing distinct skills: cavalry from Bactria and Media, archers from Elam and Sogdiana, and infantry from Anatolia and Egypt. This diversity mirrored the empire's cultural inclusiveness and demonstrated how military integration paralleled administrative unity. Infrastructure played a decisive role in maintaining imperial cohesion. The Royal Road, stretching roughly 2,700 kilometers from Sardis to Susa, was the central artery of communication. Relay stations equipped with horses allowed royal couriers to carry messages across the empire in less than 2 weeks, an unprecedented speed for the time. Herodotus noted that neither snow, nor rain, nor heat, nor darkness of night prevents these couriers from completing their appointed course, describing the efficiency of the Persian postal system. Additional roads connected Ecbatana, Persepolis, and Babylon, ensuring rapid troop movement and information exchange. The economy of the Achaemenid Empire was based on agriculture, tribute, and trade. Fertile river valleys such as Mesopotamia and Egypt provided grain surpluses, while regions like Bactria and Lydia contributed precious metals and livestock. Darius standardized coinage by introducing the daric, a gold coin, and the siglos, a silver coin, facilitating trade across different regions. This coinage system created a unified monetary economy linking the Mediterranean, Central Asia, and the Indus Valley. Royal archives record payments made in both coin and goods, reflecting the coexistence of monetary and barter systems. Trade networks flourished under Persian stability. Merchants traveled safely under royal protection, using roads and way stations that guaranteed rest and supplies. Goods such as textiles, spices, metals, and fine ceramics moved between India, Egypt, and Anatolia. Persian control of key maritime routes along the Persian Gulf and the eastern Mediterranean connected the empire to foreign markets. By integrating these trade corridors, the Persians created one of the earliest globalized economies. Society under Persian rule was hierarchically structured but allowed for mobility based on service and merit. At the top stood the great king, followed by the royal family, nobles, satraps, and military commanders. Below them were provincial administrators, artisans, farmers, and laborers. The Persepolis tablets document a wide range of workers, both free and dependent, who received regular rations of grain, wine, and livestock. Women appear frequently in these records, employed in textile workshops and holding supervisory positions, suggesting that the labor system recognized gendered contributions to economic productivity. Persian religion centered on Zoroastrianism, which by the reign of Darius I had become closely associated with royal ideology. The inscriptions at Behistun invoke Ahura Mazda as the supreme deity, emphasizing truth, justice, and order, Asha, as the foundation of legitimate rule. While Zoroastrianism shaped the moral vision of the empire, the Achaemenid kings practiced notable religious tolerance. They supported local temples and respected regional deities. Cyrus the Great's decree allowing the Jews to return to Jerusalem and rebuild their temple, recorded in the Cyrus Cylinder, exemplifies this policy of inclusion. Art and architecture under the Achaemenids reflected their imperial philosophy, unity through diversity. At Persepolis, artisans from across the empire, Ionian, Median, Babylonian, and Egyptian, worked side by side. Reliefs depict delegations from various nations bringing tribute, each rendered with distinct attire and hairstyles. Columns, friezes, and staircases incorporated motifs from earlier civilizations, merging Mesopotamian monumentalism with Greek and Egyptian stylistic precision. The result was an architectural language that symbolized imperial harmony. Royal tombs at Nakshi Rustam, near Persepolis, demonstrate both continuity and innovation. Carved into the rock face, these tombs contain reliefs showing the king before the fire altar, symbolizing the divine legitimacy of his reign. The inscriptions reinforce the connection between the monarch's authority and Ahura Mazda's will. These monuments served not only as burial sites, but as visual declarations of the empire's ideological foundation. Education and literacy were primarily restricted to scribes, priests, and administrators. Training in cuneiform, Aramaic script, and Elamite administrative language was essential for imperial service. Scribes held respected positions, ensuring the functioning of economic and political systems. Knowledge transmission occurred within temple schools and bureaucratic offices, where apprentices learned record-keeping, calculation, and correspondence. Persian culture valued truthfulness, discipline, and loyalty, qualities repeatedly emphasized in royal inscriptions. Young nobles were trained in horseback riding, archery, and speaking the truth, forming the moral code that underpinned elite identity. This code influenced governance, shaping the empire's emphasis on order and justice over coercion. Cultural exchange under Achaemenid rule contributed to the development of art, religion, and science across regions. Babylonian astronomy, Egyptian medicine, and Greek philosophy interacted within a shared imperial context. The empire's openness to diverse intellectual traditions laid the groundwork for cross-cultural learning that continued under the Hellenistic world. The modern rediscovery of the Achaemenid Empire began in the early 19th century, when European explorers, scholars, and diplomats turned their attention to the ruins scattered across modern-day Iran. Until this period, much of what was known about the Persian Empire came primarily from Greek historians such as Herodotus, Ctesias, and Xenophon, whose accounts, though valuable, often carried bias and a limited understanding of Persian perspectives. Archaeological investigation and the decipherment of ancient inscriptions gradually replaced speculation with documented evidence, transforming the study of Persia from legend into a field of historical science. One of the earliest and most significant discoveries was the Behistun inscription, located near Kermanshah in western Iran. Carved into a limestone cliff around 520 BC during the reign of Darius I, it contains a trilingual text written in Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian cuneiform. In 1835, British officer Henry Creswick Rawlinson began copying the inscription at great personal risk, climbing the steep rock face to reach the carved panels. Through years of comparative study, he successfully deciphered Old Persian cuneiform by 1846 and published his findings in the 1850s. The Behistun inscription became the key to understanding cuneiform writing, much as the Rosetta Stone had unlocked Egyptian hieroglyphs. It provided a first-hand royal account of Darius's rise to power and his suppression of rebellions, confirming the historical details mentioned in Greek and biblical texts. Following Rawlinson's work, archaeological exploration expanded across the Iranian plateau. Sites such as Persepolis, Pasargadae, and Susa drew attention for their monumental architecture and inscriptions. In the 1870s and 1880s, French and German expeditions conducted systematic studies, mapping palace ruins, collecting artifacts, and photographing reliefs. The French archaeologist Marcel Dulafoy and his wife Jane Dulafoy excavated at Susa in the 1880s, uncovering glazed brick panels and friezes depicting royal guards and tribute bearers. These finds demonstrated the artistic refinement of Achaemenid craftsmanship and revealed connections between Persian and Mesopotamian artistic traditions. Excavations at Persepolis, initiated in the early 20th century by the Oriental Institute of the University of Chicago under Ernst Herzfeld, and Erich Schmidt, brought to light thousands of administrative clay tablets known as the Persepolis fortification tablets. Dating from the reign of Darius I, 509 to 494 BC, they contain detailed records of rations, travel permits, and supplies for workers and officials. Written primarily in Elamite and sealed with personal stamps, these documents revolutionized the understanding of Achaemenid bureaucracy. They revealed a well-structured economic system based on accountability and documented the roles of both men and women in state operations. The tablets also confirmed that the Persian administration relied heavily on written record-keeping and standardized documentation. Parallel discoveries in Babylon and Egypt further clarified the extent of Persian control. In Mesopotamia, cuneiform chronicles recorded events such as Cyrus the Great's conquest of Babylon in 539 BC and Cambyses II's campaign in Egypt. In Egypt, Persian rule was documented through stele and temple inscriptions bearing the names of Darius and Xerxes. The Canal of Darius, linking the Nile to the Red Sea, was confirmed through inscriptions describing its construction and use for maritime trade. Together, these findings provided material evidence for the empire's administrative and infrastructural sophistication. The Cyrus cylinder, discovered in 1879 by Hormizd Rassam during excavations at Babylon, became one of the most famous artifacts of the Achaemenid period. Written in Akkadian cuneiform, it records Cyrus's capture of Babylon and his policy of repatriating displaced peoples and restoring local temples. Modern historians regard the cylinder as a declaration of imperial policy rather than a universal statement of human rights, but it nonetheless reflects Cyrus's pragmatic and inclusive approach to governance. The cylinder contains corroborated accounts in the Hebrew Bible describing the return of the Jewish exiles under Persian rule, bridging archaeological and textual sources. In the 20th century, archaeological methodology became increasingly systematic. Stratigraphic excavation, carbon dating, and artifact conservation improved accuracy in interpreting material remains. The Iranian government, recognizing the national significance of Achaemenid heritage, established institutions to preserve ancient sites. The creation of the Iranian Archaeological Service in the 1930s and later the Iranian Cultural Heritage Organization formalized these efforts. International collaborations, including the Italian mission to Persepolis and the French mission at Susa, continued through much of the century. The 1950s and 1960s saw further discoveries that clarified aspects of Persian urban planning and architecture. Excavations at Pasargadae, the capital built by Cyrus the Great, revealed a planned city layout with palaces, gardens, and water channels aligned according to geometric principles. The site's tomb, traditionally identified as that of Cyrus, showed a simple yet monumental style distinct from later Achaemenid constructions. The discovery of this tomb and its inscriptions reaffirmed Cyrus's historical presence as the founder of the Persian Empire. Modern technology has enhanced research into the Achaemenid past. Remote sensing, aerial photography, and 3D scanning have mapped ancient sites with precision. At Persepolis, digital imaging has reconstructed palace complexes and reliefs damaged over time. Linguistic databases now integrate Elamite, Old Persian, and Aramaic sources, allowing scholars to cross-reference economic and administrative data. Such digital tools have refined our understanding of how the empire functioned day to day. Beyond archaeology, historiography, the study of how history is written, has also evolved. Earlier European scholars tended to portray Persia through the lens of its conflicts with Greece, emphasizing contrasts between East and West. Modern historians, using Persian inscriptions and archaeological data, have rebalanced the narrative. Works by scholars such as Pierre Briant, Amélie Court, and Maria Brocius present the Achaemenid Empire as a complex, multi-ethnic state characterized by administrative innovation and cultural integration rather than simple despotism. This revision of perspective has redefined Persia as a formative civilization in world history, equal in sophistication to its Western contemporaries. In modern Iran, Interest in the Achaemenid past grew alongside national identity movements. During the early 20th century, leaders of the Pahlavi dynasty invoked Cyrus the Great as a symbol of just governance and cultural unity. The 2500th anniversary of the founding of the Persian Empire, held in 1971 at Persepolis under Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, brought international attention to Iran's ancient heritage. While criticized for its extravagance, the event showcased archaeological achievements and reinforced the Achaemenid legacy as central to Iranian historical consciousness. Academic research continued after the Iranian Revolution of 1979, though access for foreign archaeologists became more limited. Iranian scholars took a leading role in continuing excavations and conservation efforts. Universities and research institutes in Tehran, Shiraz, and Mashhad developed programs in ancient history and archaeology, producing studies that integrated local knowledge with global academic standards. Joint research projects between Iranian and international teams have since resumed under new cultural agreements. Achaemenid sites today form part of the UNESCO World Heritage. Persepolis was inscribed in 1979, followed by Pasargadae in 2004 and the Persian Achaemenid system in 2016. These designations recognize not only architectural and artistic achievement, but also the empire's contribution to human organization and governance. Preservation work focuses on protecting structures from erosion, tourism impact, and environmental damage. Public access to Achaemenid history has expanded through museums and digital archives. Artifacts from Persepolis and Susa are held in the National Museum of Iran, the Louvre, the British Museum, and the Oriental Institute. Online databases now allow scholars and students worldwide to examine tablet transcriptions and artifact records. The combination of open access and new analytical tools has broadened participation in Persian studies beyond academic specialists. Modern Iranian culture continues to draw on the imagery and ideals of the Achaemenid Empire. Cyrus the Great is remembered as a figure of justice and tolerance. His legacy is commemorated annually at his tomb in Pasargadae, which attracts visitors from across Iran. In public discourse, references to the Achaemenids often emphasize continuity between ancient Persian governance and modern statehood. Educational programs and documentaries present the empire as a foundation for later developments in administration, infrastructure, and intercultural relations. The rediscovery of the Persian Achaemenid Empire thus represents more than archaeological recovery. It reflects a global reevaluation of ancient history. By integrating epigraphic evidence, excavated data, and reassessed classical sources, modern scholarship has reconstructed a reliable account of how the empire functioned. The process continues as technology, interdisciplinary research, and international collaboration reveal further details about its economy, culture, and political systems. The Achaemenid Empire has moved from the margins of classical history to a central position in understanding the ancient world and the origins of large-scale governance. In early 330 BC, the Achaemenid Empire, the world's largest and most administratively sophisticated state of its time, was in its final year. The empire that had stretched from the Aegean Sea to the Indus Valley, from the steppes of Central Asia to the deserts of Egypt, now stood fractured under the pressure of Alexander III of Macedon's relentless campaigns. After the decisive defeat of Darius III at the Battle of Gaugamela in October 331 BC, Alexander advanced southward, capturing the major Persian capitals one after another. Babylon surrendered peacefully in late 331 BC, and Susa followed soon after, offering its treasury without resistance. The wealth Alexander seized there was immense, estimated by ancient sources such as Arrian and Curtius Rufus at more than 50,000 talents of silver. Yet the symbolic heart of the Persian monarchy still lay ahead. Persepolis, the ceremonial capital built by Darius I around 518 BC. Persepolis stood on a terrace rising from the plain, surrounded by the Zagros Mountains. It was both a royal residence and a monumental archive of imperial authority. Its palaces, staircases, and reliefs depicted subjects from across the empire bringing tribute to the king. To take Persepolis meant to claim the prestige of the Achaemenid world itself. Alexander began his march toward Persepolis in December 331 BC, crossing the Persian highlands in the harsh winter. He divided his army. Parmenion advanced through the main route via Susa and the Persian Gate, while Alexander led a smaller force through mountain passes to surprise the defenders. The Persian satrap of Persis, Ariobarzanes, had fortified the narrow Persian Gate, modern Tangi Marin, with natural barriers and troops determined to resist. In January 330 BC, Alexander's army encountered this defensive position. The Persians used their knowledge of the terrain to ambush the Macedonian vanguard, inflicting significant losses. Ancient accounts describe this as one of Alexander's hardest-fought battles. Unable to advance directly, Alexander found a local guide who revealed an alternate mountain path. He led a detachment in a flanking maneuver, encircling Ariobarzanes' forces. After intense fighting, the Persian defenders were defeated. Ariobarzanes and his men fought to the last, their resistance marking the final organized defense of the Achaemenid heartland. By February 330 BC, Alexander entered Persepolis. The city's satrap, Tiridates, reportedly attempted to surrender it peacefully, recognizing the futility of resistance. Alexander allowed his troops to seize the immense royal treasury, which some ancient writers estimated at over 120,000 talents of gold and silver. The looting lasted several days, and Persepolis, once the symbol of Persian unity and imperial order, was stripped of its wealth. The most controversial act came soon after. During a banquet in the spring of 330 BC, Alexander ordered, or permitted, the burning of the royal palace complex. Sources differ on his motives. Arrian and Plutarch record that the destruction began as a drunken impulse, spurred by a companion named Thais, who urged Alexander to avenge the Persian sack of Athens in 480 BC. Others suggest it was a calculated act to signal the end of the Achaemenid dynasty and the transfer of power to Macedon. The flames consumed the palaces of Darius I and Xerxes I. Stone reliefs cracked under the heat, wooden roofs collapsed, and the painted halls blackened. The fire marked the symbolic extinction of Achaemenid sovereignty. Afterward, Alexander reportedly regretted the act, realizing he had destroyed a masterpiece of art and administration rather than an enemy fortress. The ruins of Persepolis would remain as a silent testimony to that decision. While Alexander occupied the Persian heartland, Darius III still lived, fleeing eastward in hopes of raising new support from eastern satraps and possibly the Bactrian and Sogdian regions. By mid-330 BC, Darius was pursued by Alexander across Media and Parthia. In the summer, near the town of Hekatompelos, Darius was betrayed by his own satrap, Bessus, the governor of Bactria. Bessus sought to claim the Persian throne for himself under the name Artaxerxes V and ordered his men to arrest Darius. When Alexander's vanguard approached, Bessus and his conspirators abandoned Darius, mortally wounding him before fleeing east. Arrian, writing centuries later, records that Alexander found Darius still alive in a cart, pierced by javelins. The Macedonian king covered the Persian monarch with his own cloak, ensuring him a royal burial at Persepolis. Darius died later that night in July 330 BC, ending the line of Achaemenid kings that had ruled for over 2 centuries. After Darius's death, Alexander declared himself the legitimate successor to the Achaemenid kings. He adopted Persian royal dress, employed Persian officials, and maintained much of the empire's administrative structure. The satrapal system, the royal road, and the tax networks remained largely intact. Alexander's objective was not to destroy the Persian system, but to inherit and adapt it under his rule. In the months that followed, he pursued Bessus into Central Asia, where the Bactrian satrap was eventually captured and executed for treason. With that, resistance to Macedonian rule collapsed. The Persian Empire, as an independent political entity, ceased to exist. Persepolis, meanwhile, was never rebuilt. Its remains were left as a ruin, visited occasionally by local populations and later by Alexander's successors. The once great capital of Darius and Xerxes stood as an archaeological relic, its inscriptions still proclaiming the authority of kings who called themselves King of Kings, King of Lands. By the end of 330 BC, Alexander had assumed control over all major Achaemenid territories: Anatolia, Mesopotamia, Egypt, Persia, and parts of Central Asia. The empire that Cyrus the Great founded in 550 BC had fallen, but its administrative and cultural framework endured within the Hellenistic world. Greek and Persian traditions merged, forming the foundation for centuries of imperial governance across Asia. Thus, the Achaemenid Empire's end came not through sudden collapse, but through absorption. Its capitals, Ecbatana, Susa, Babylon, and Persepolis, became nodes of a new transcontinental empire that retained Persian systems of taxation, infrastructure, and governance. The legacy of the Achaemenids outlasted their dynasty, shaping political ideas from the Seleucids to the Romans and beyond. The final act of 330 BC closed a 220-year chapter of human history. From Cyrus's unification of the Persians in 550 BC to the fall of Persepolis in 330 BC, the Achaemenid Empire defined the political, economic, and cultural landscape of the ancient Near East. Its end under Alexander marked the transition from the Persian imperial age to the Hellenistic era, where the memory of Achaemenid rule continued to influence empires yet to come.